Upon returning to the village hall, Thorian found Melina sighing as she sipped her tea. As he entered, the elven young woman immediately tensed and placed her cup back on its saucer. "Be at ease, Melina," Thorian said, smiling as he approached the elven woman. "I'm just here to claim the rewards for a couple of quests I've finished." "Right away, my lord," Melina replied, bowing slightly before retrieving 3 parchments from beneath her desk. "You have 2 quests completed and 1 partially finished. Would you like to claim them all, or just the daily ones?" "Just the daily ones," Thorian replied, and Melina retrieved her stamp and beeswax once more. After impressing the seal on the 2 parchments, a notification materialized before Thorian. "Level up. Personal resources. Arcane coins 200. Having reviewed the rewards from the 2 quests, Thorian's gaze shifted toward the bulletin board. To his disappointment, he was unable to locate the Revenge on the Monster quest. Nonetheless, Thorian noticed a new quest that hadn't been there previously. Raising an eyebrow at the unexpected opportunity, he made his way over to the board and removed the quest. Hopefully, it's a good one. Purification of Arendel's Sanctuary. Quest chain. Description: venture into the Shelderwood Forest and locate the entrance to the Lost Elven Sanctuary of Arendel. Quest objective. Reach the entrance to the Lost Elven Sanctuary. Solve the riddle given by the Whispering Trees to gain access to the sanctuary. Rewards: 200 arcane coins. 500 experience points. Arendel? Isn't that the dungeon with the corrupted tree monsters? Upon seeing the words quest chain, a wide grin spread across Thorian's face. He knew that by completing the chain, he would receive truly unique rewards that would set him apart from his competitors. Arendel isn't the type of dungeon I can clear right now, but the quest is simply about finding it and solving that riddle. Though Thorian hadn't spent all his time around Loxley in his past life, he had heard rumors of a perplexing riddle that had cost the lives of 5 squads. I don't remember what the riddle was, but Hearth was the answer. With his plan in place, Thorian glanced back at Melina, only to find her staring wide-eyed at the quest parchment in his hand. Noticing his gaze, Melina quickly shook her head and resumed her usual demeanor, as if nothing had happened. Lost Elven Sanctuary, huh? Maybe she knows something. Thorian handed the quest to Melina, who took out her stamp while avoiding eye contact. As he observed the elven woman busily sealing the quest with beeswax, he broached the subject. "Do you know of a place called Arendel?" Melina hesitated just before stamping the quest, then continued her task. As the parchment slowly disintegrated, she looked up at Thorian and smiled. "I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it. There are many elves across the 1,000 worlds, so it might be a city in a world I have no information about." Thorian furrowed his brow for a moment before shrugging. "That's indeed possible. If your memory is ever jogged and you recall something about this Arendel, please let me know." "Of course, my lord." "I am at your service," Melina replied, bowing slightly. Thorian nodded, releasing a small breath before glancing back at the bulletin board. To his surprise, the quest he had just accepted reappeared on the board. "Can that quest be claimed by multiple people?" Thorian asked Melina with interest. "Yes, my lord," she nodded. "This first part of the chain quest can be claimed by anyone who wishes to do so." "That's wonderful news," Thorian smiled. "I'll share it with my subjects very soon." With that, Thorian left the village hall and headed toward the dense patch of forest where the orcs were tirelessly cutting down trees. Their mastery of their weapons and the sharpness of their battle axes made them far more proficient woodcutters than the kobolds. Zogthar, in particular, was quite impressive, having already felled 2 medium-sized trees while the others had managed only 1. "Stop!" Thorian commanded as he strode among the orcs. "Take the trees you've cut and follow me." The orcs grunted and nodded before wrapping their arms around the trees they had felled. Thorian anticipated that Zogthor would struggle with the 2 trees he had cut, but the orc simply enveloped his entire body in a gray aura and hoisted the 2 trees, one under each arm. His strength is truly a sight to behold. His base stats should be even higher than mine. Contemplating the formidable team of warriors the orcs would become once they received their classes, Thorian's lips quivered with excitement. The orcs' high strength and constitution made them an ideal fit for the warrior class. But not now. They need to be assimilated into the pack first. After several minutes of laboriously carrying the heavy trees, the orcs, led by Thorian, arrived at the territory altar. Their eyes widened, and they dropped the trees they were carrying as soon as they caught sight of the demon's face. "Return to your duties," Thorian ordered. "You shall place your work in front of this altar every 2 hours until you are relieved of your duties. Do you understand?" "Yes, understood." Zogthor regained his composure and replied respectfully. The other orcs followed suit before heading back to the forest. With the orcs gone, Thorian placed his palm on the demon's face. "Absorb wood." As before, the cut trees disintegrated into specks of light before being absorbed by the altar. Checking the territory resources, Thorian grinned, seeing there was enough wood. "Repair wall." Though he couldn't see the result of his command, Thorian felt a slight tremor beneath his feet. Once the tremor ceased, he knew the repair process had been completed. "That should give me enough time. Once Nox evolves, they shouldn't have trouble with most monsters." After spending 500 wolf units on repairing the wall, Thorian made his way toward the village hall. He then sat cross-legged right in front of the door and started his meditation. As he began his breathing technique, Thorian immediately sensed a significant change. The amount of ether he could grasp from the air was much higher than usual. So this is the effect of the ether line's nexus? That miserly William really didn't want me to meditate here when I visited. As Thorian guided the dense ether through his chi channels, he found it much easier to penetrate his relatively clogged pathways. Minutes swiftly passed as Thorian cleared his channels using the dense ether enveloping him. In just under 15 minutes, the first droplet of chi materialized in his dantian. "Excellent. With this pace, I should be able to break through the Vermilion Bird's gate." With a goal in mind, Thorian continued his breathing technique. The second droplet reached his dantian even faster, taking only 10 minutes. The third one took 8 minutes, as did the rest that followed. Thorian practiced his breathing technique for an hour and a half, amassing a total of 10 chi droplets during the session. This should be enough. With the 14 chi droplets circulating in his dantian, Thorian directed them toward the entrance of the Vermilion Bird Meridian. "It's still stuck?" Undeterred, Thorian pushed the chi droplets again and again, gradually chipping away at the obstructed entrance. The process was challenging, akin to trying to dig through hard ground with layers of roots underneath using a small shovel. Nevertheless, Thorian persisted. For the remaining 30 minutes, he continued to push his chi, slowly clearing the entrance. Finally, with only a minute remaining in his meditation time, one of the chi droplets broke through the entrance and entered the meridian. The other 13 chi droplets followed suit and flowed through the grimy path. Although the path itself was dirty, it wasn't obstructed and allowed for relatively smooth passage. The end of the path, however, was another matter. When Thorian's chi reached the end of the meridian path and the entrance to the first node, it became stuck once again. The node's entrance was as clogged as the meridian's gate, if not more so. Unable to cross through the barrier of the first node, Thorian exhaled deeply and opened his eyes. His meditation session had come to an end. Rank up. Oh, my cultivation stage has ranked up. Display panel. Ding. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 4/30ths, EXP, 30/650. Class Magus. Level 18/20ths, EXP, 230/450. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering Second Stage, 5.3%. Stats. Strength 41. Agility 46. Constitution 23. Mana 53. Chi 14. 3.6. Skills. Minor Fire Affinity, passive. Flame Resistance, passive. Fireball, active. Combustion Touch, active. Checking his stat panel, Thorian's gaze focused on his class level. I'm close to hitting a wall in my class. I can't advance until I master all 4 basic spells. Taking advantage of this brief moment of tranquility, Thorian inhaled deeply. The night was still young, and he had a multitude of tasks to complete within his territory before he could attend to other matters. A part of him yearned to simply dismiss all these responsibilities. Instead of devoting hours and days to securing the village and ensuring it wouldn't self-destruct without his constant supervision, he could venture out and concentrate on his own development. With his present power, eliminating 500 humans who hadn't yet acquired their classes wouldn't pose much of a challenge. He could also locate and conquer dungeons, reaping significant rewards. No, that's a foolish notion. Thorian shook his head. This territory holds more value than both the human hunting quest and the dungeons combined. I must dedicate every waking moment to it until it achieves full stability. Putting those thoughts to rest, Thorian checked his display panel once again and concentrated on his fireball spell to reveal more information. Fireball. Description: you conjure a fiery orb and hurl it at your enemies, leaving them charred and weakened. Proficiency 87.35%. Seeing the proficiency at the end of the skill description, Thorian nodded in approval. Good, I'm almost done with Fireball. I just need to focus on the other 3 skills. Following his train of thought, Thorian glanced at the patch of forest where the orcs were cutting trees. The first building I'll upgrade is the Magus statue. I need the guild to be built as soon as possible. Rising from his cross-legged position, Thorian was assaulted by a disgusting stench. Looking around, he saw the black goo had spread all over the place, its viscosity and volume even greater than usual. Is that the filth from my vermilion bird meridian? What a godforsaken body. Thorian approached the territory altar, surprised by the number of cut trees surrounding it. The orcs had accomplished more than half of the work that had taken the kobolds a good part of the afternoon and night in just a few hours. I should be able to upgrade the Magus statue with this much. Wearing a broad smile, Thorian placed his hand on the demon's face and commanded it to absorb the trees. Once they were entirely disintegrated, he checked his resources. Territory resources. Resources. Gathered experience 1,230. Wood 1,150. Upgrade Magus statue. Magus statue. Description: the Magus statue embodies the essence of arcane knowledge and mastery over the elements. By channeling their magical energies, the Magus can wield destructive spells to vanquish their foes and devastate the land before them. Upgrade. Gathered experience, 750. Wood, 1,000. Do you wish to upgrade the Magus statue into the Magus Guild? Yes, I wish. A noise from the west indicated that the upgrade process had begun. From a distance, Thorian could see a wooden building taking shape where the statue of the woman Magus once stood. Eager to explore the newly constructed guild, Thorian hastened toward it with quick strides. Upon entering the newly built Magus Guild, Thorian was immediately struck by the modest yet captivating atmosphere of the interior. The wooden structure, though simple, exuded an aura of mysticism and potential. The guild's low level was reflected in its relatively small size and limited furnishings, but it was evident that it had been designed with growth and expansion in mind. On the left side of the guild, there was a room dedicated to testing the potential of aspiring magi. The room contained an assortment of magical artifacts and testing devices, designed to measure the innate magical aptitude of those who wish to join the ranks of the Magus Guild. Good, we can finally recruit proper magi and not just haphazardly choose them. While the room on the left was important, Thorian's interest lay in the room on the right. There, he spotted the guild master's desk, cluttered with scrolls, half-dried parchments, and massive arcane tomes. However, most intriguingly, the guild master was nowhere to be seen. "Yuck, I can't reach," a small squeaky voice came from the other side of the room. Thorian furrowed his brow in confusion and walked toward the desk. As he checked behind it, he discovered a small creature with lavender skin and a head that was disproportionately large compared to its tiny body. Its hair was white, and although unkempt, it looked silky smooth. Seeing the poor creature struggling to jump off the chair and reach the desk, Thorian couldn't help but feel sympathetic. "Do you need some help?" The creature turned toward Thorian, frowning, but as it looked at him, its expression changed from confusion to pure surprise. "You are the Lord?" the creature asked with wide eyes. "I have never seen a monster become a village lord. That is marvelous." As the creature opened its arms wide, Thorian lifted it onto the desk and said, "Well, I happen to be quite special." "And you're a magus too?" The creature's eyes glistened. "Not only are you special, but you are also wise. Magi are the wisest and strongest, capable of turning the tides of a battlefield with a single spell." Thorian furrowed his eyebrows as he examined the lavender fluffy creature. While he had never seen one that looked like this before, he had heard of a species with a similar description. "Are you a buzzlekin?" "Yes, I am." The creature proudly placed its hand on its chest. "I am Thimblewick Fizzlegrin, seeker of the highest truth and this village's Magus Guild master." Thorian raised an eyebrow at Thimblewick's sudden declaration. He had encountered guild masters of many different species in his past life, but a buzzlekin was a first. Now that I think about it, Melina wasn't the village hall receptionist of this territory when I visited it in the past. The Magus Guild master was also that elder nymph, Saphia. While Thorian was lost in his thoughts, Thimblewick cleared his throat. Ahem, ahem. "Do you require anything? Maybe a skill?" The buzzlekin wore an expectant look on his expressive face as he lightly rubbed his hands together like a stereotypical merchant. Observing the guild master's demeanor, Thorian wasn't sure whether to laugh or be serious. "I need the water ball skill first to get rid of this stench," Thorian answered. "A civilized monster, now isn't that rare?" Thimblewick nodded approvingly as he rummaged through the scrolls on his desk. Upon finding the scroll he was searching for, Thimblewick handed it to Thorian with a childish smile. "This is the water ball scroll. Since you are the Lord and you're the first to purchase a skill, I'll offer it to you for only 200 arcane coins." Thorian nodded in agreement with the buzzlekin's proposal. "It's been so long so I'm not exactly sure, but I believe that they cost 500 coins normally." As Thorian accepted the skill scroll, Thimblewick chuckled childishly before muttering to himself, "My first ever deal. I'm so happy." Thorian shook his head at the peculiar scene before saying, "I'll leave you for now. The other magi should come soon to buy their skills too. Good doing business with you. Until next time." With Thimblewick waving at him with a smile, Thorian left the Magus Guild and tore open the skill scroll. The yellow parchment shimmered with a sky-blue light before disintegrating into specks that Thorian's body absorbed. Water ball skill has been learned. Water ball. Description: you summon a watery orb and launch it at your enemies, drenching them and knocking them off balance. Proficiency 0%. I need to use my basic skills whenever possible. The more time I spend without fully maxing them out, the longer I'll be stuck without a class advancement. With his mana now full, Thorian headed straight in the direction of the orcs. He needed to return and hunt the monsters beyond the wall to continue progressing. Half an hour before the apocalypse. "Grandpa, Are we really going to the plaza in the middle of the night? The young boy, Little Roo, had a much improved complexion compared to when he was with the pack of cobloids. However, he was still shivering and maintained a closed demeanor as he followed his grandfather. The old man offered a gentle smile and said, "We're just taking a stroll. Some fresh air never hurt anybody, right?" Though Roo remained unconvinced, he nodded and followed the old man without any further complaints. In the middle of the night, the usually bustling streets were practically empty. The shop stands were closed, and only a few horse carriages and boisterous drinking buddies populated the streets. The old man, of course, knew the city like the back of his hand. He understood precisely which roads to take and which streets to avoid at all costs. The underbelly of Loxley was a dark place, and he certainly didn't want to escape one dangerous situation only to be ensnared by slave merchants or worse. As he walked through the streets with his fidgety grandson at his side, the old man's thoughts drifted back to the talking white-furred creature. A talking monster that sounds like a noble offering advice? I must be mad not to at least check out the plaza and see what happens. The old man's years of experience had never prepared him for an encounter with a creature from a folktale. However, he understood how fickle Lady Fortune could be. Opportunities come only once, and it's the responsibility of a mortal to recognize and seize them. Upon reaching the plaza, the old man and Little Roo scanned the area, noticing a single small group occupying the entire square. The group consisted of 6 individuals. 3 of them were sitting by the fountain, engaged in conversation and laughter, while the other 3 stood with puffed-up chests and stoic expressions on their faces. "Those people look scary," the young boy muttered under his breath. The old man couldn't help but agree. Careful not to make much noise or attract any unwanted attention, he took Little Roo's hand and led him to the other side of the plaza, well out of the group's sight. As they walked towards the edge of the town square, the old man couldn't resist stealing glances at the group, particularly the 3 individuals sitting by the fountain with relaxed expressions. The one who immediately caught his eye was a large man with broad shoulders and massive muscles. Even while seated, he towered over the other 2 with his imposing frame. "Wait, isn't that the beast?" The old man suddenly stopped, which surprised Little Roo as he looked up at him in confusion. However, the old man's facial expression quickly conveyed everything the young boy needed to know. He was horrified. For a decade, the old man had heard rumors of a man with the physique of a beast, capable of wrestling a bull and tearing a child in half with his bare hands. A ruthless machine that served the underworld, committing heinous crimes and spreading fear and terror to anyone who dared to cross paths with his masters. There is no way, right? The old man couldn't help but chuckle at his overactive imagination. The man before him was smiling and laughing, a far cry from the cruel and emotionless beast he had heard about in the tavern rumors. Those drunken fools sure do like to spin tales. A man that can tear a child in half with his hands? Give me a break. Grandpa. The little boy nudged at the old man's pants, bringing him back to reality. Noticing the lost and confused expression on Roo's face, the old man smiled and continued walking toward the edge of the plaza. There, they sat down together on a bench, waiting for the appointed time to arrive. As the minutes passed, the old man's gaze drifted back to the group by the fountain. This time, he chose not to focus on the muscular one but on the other 2. To the left was a man with a slender build. He was wearing a light brown long-sleeved linen shirt with a laced-up neckline, a truly unremarkable outfit. However, it was clean, which told the old man that he was either wealthy enough to afford new clothes or diligent enough to properly repair and regularly clean old ones. Without much thought, the old man's focus shifted to the center, where a lithe woman sat between the 2 men. Her wavy, raven-black hair was tied into a ponytail. As for her attire, she wore a form-fitting, dark green fabric. Such clothes were not easy to come by and required skillful tailoring, which only deepened the old man's curiosity. As time continued to pass, the old man grew silent. Although he attempted to distract himself by engaging in conversation with little Rue, his mind couldn't help but entertain various thoughts and imagine scenarios. Just a couple of minutes left. While the old man was lost in thought, gazing at the ground, little Rue nudged him from the side. "Grandpa, those people are coming." The old man snapped out of his reverie and looked up, only to find the group of 6 slowly approaching them. "Wait here, everyone. You're going to scare them." The lady in green halted the rest of her group and continued walking alone toward the old man and the young boy. "Hey there, what might be your names?" the lady asked with a friendly smile. She had piercing green eyes that seemed to read one's soul, and her light makeup perfectly complemented her heart-shaped face. "Whoa! Pretty lady." Both the old man and the black-haired lady looked at little Rue with surprise. Seeing the innocent expression on the boy's face, the lady chuckled softly. "Thank you, you're a well-mannered little kid. What's your name?" "My name is Rue," the little boy answered excitedly. His tense demeanor seemed to have vanished as he talked with the lady. "Nice to meet you, young man. My name is Nalia." She then smiled and looked at the old man. "And what's your name?" "I am Robert," the old man replied curtly. Although the lady before him was friendly and the atmosphere seemed relaxed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. As his gaze shifted from Nalia to the men behind her, he noticed their intense expressions. The 3 stoic men, who had not said a word, appeared especially fearsome as they scrutinized him and his grandson with cold eyes. "Were you planning on staying the night here, Mr. Robert?" Nalia's question brought his focus back to her. She wore a questioning and puzzled expression, accompanied by a mix of compassion and sincerity. "No, of course not," Robert nervously chuckled at the unexpected question. "We're just here for a breath of fresh air." "A breath of fresh air, I see," Nalia smiled and nodded. She then looked up at the sky with a melancholic expression on her face. "It is indeed a beautiful night to stroll around. The skies are clear, and the moon is truly captivating." Nalia gazed at the sky for a few more seconds before looking back down and smiling at the old man. "I won't make things more awkward for you, Mr. Robert. I hope you have a great night." She then walked back toward the rest of her group before making their way back to the fountain. Robert's eyes couldn't help but remain fixated on them. Even though he didn't know who they truly were, he understood that they were people he should definitely avoid. Dark clouds thickened, shrouding the night sky. The once radiant white moon disappeared, leaving only intermittent lightning strikes to pierce the darkness below. Thunderclaps boomed, each one sending shockwaves through Robert's core. Rue clung to the old man's arm in terror, letting out a yelp with each thunderous roar. "It's a storm," Robert said, urgency in his voice. "We should move before it rains." Just as the old man rose from the bench, the earth trembled, throwing him off balance. He stumbled, gripping Rue tightly to shield him from harm. Regaining his footing, fear flickered in his eyes. "That felt like an earthquake," he said, his voice quivering. "We need to find shelter, now." Just as Robert prepared to scoop up Rue and make their escape, a surreal scene unfolded before him. Multiple rocky protrusions burst from the plaza floor, like a mother giving birth to several children at once. The ground fractured as these objects emerged from beneath the surface with unnatural speed, resembling a gushing stream of water from a spring. "I thought you had gone crazy," a muscular man laughed manically, capturing Robert's attention. The man's eyes were filled with madness as he gazed at the rocky structures surrounding them. "The end of the world is truly here." Hearing those words from the strong man's mouth, Robert's mind went blank for a moment. The end of the world? As if determined to fulfill the prophecy, the storm intensified. Torrential rain drenched Robert and Rue, while the plaza continued to tremble from the emergence of the rocky structures. When the tremors finally ceased and the structures stopped growing, Rue mustered the courage to cling to Robert, crying out, "Grandpa, I'm scared." Robert shivered, uncertain whether it was the cold rain trickling down his back or the chaos surrounding them that chilled him. He hugged the young boy tightly with one arm and reassured him, "Don't worry, Rue. Grandpa is here, and there's nothing to be scared of." The old man's attention turned to the group of 6. The 3 stoic men had lost their composure, staring in horror at the structures that had erupted from the depths of the earth around them. The muscular man continued to laugh manically, while the slender one glanced around with a mixture of surprise and fear. Only Nadia appeared unfazed. Her posture was relaxed, and a slight smile graced her face, as if the unfolding events were merely a mild amusement. "That white creature told me to come here. Is it because of these things?" The old man chose not to dwell on the 6 enigmatic individuals, instead concentrating on the structures that had appeared throughout the plaza. They were immense, towering over any house and rivaling the watchtowers that lined the city walls. As Robert's focus sharpened, he realized their true nature. Are these statues? The craftsmanship of the 4 giant stone figures surpassed anything he had ever seen. The existence of one such impeccably carved, colossal statue would have been miraculous enough, but the presence of 4 could only be the work of a deity. Robert's gaze settled on the statue nearest to him. It portrayed a man clad in armor, with a voluminous yet neatly trimmed beard and a fierce expression on his face. He wielded a menacing battle axe, poised to strike any approaching enemy. Despite being a statue, Robert felt as if it were alive. Its spirit seemed palpable, and the intricate details of the carving gave the impression that a giant warrior had been turned to stone mid-battle. Entranced by the statue's beauty, Robert led Rue closer to it. The young boy followed his grandpa without hesitation, his own eyes filled with curiosity and wonder. As Robert reached out and placed his hand on the exquisite stone, a mysterious message materialized before him. "Would you like to choose the warrior class?" "What? Am I seeing things?" Robert blinked and shook his head, but no matter what he did or where he looked, the message remained centered in his vision. He couldn't escape it. "Grandpa, what are you doing?" Rue asked, puzzled. Robert tried to look at the young boy beside him, but the message obstructed Rue's face. He couldn't even see his grandson's expression with the floating text in the way. Yes, I want," Robert replied aloud, frustration seeping into his voice. He could feel Rue's hand trembling in his grip, a telltale sign that the old man's behavior was becoming increasingly bizarre. "Choose one of these starting abilities. Power Strike. Imbue your weapon with magical power and strike the enemy with an attack that deals additional damage. Charge. Allows the warrior to quickly close the distance to their target, potentially stunning or knocking them down with a small shockwave. Taunting Shout. Provokes enemies to focus their attacks on the warrior, protecting more vulnerable party members. Weapon Proficiency. Passive allows the warrior to use various types of melee weapons effectively, such as swords, axes, and maces. Shield Proficiency. Passive grants the ability to use shields for added defense, helping to block or deflect incoming attacks. Robert was baffled by the colorful screen that appeared before him, but the more he examined it, the more he felt something was amiss. How can I read this? How do I understand this language? Grandpa, can we go back home? Rue tugged at Robert's sleeve, his voice quivering as tears threatened to fall. The police spurred Robert to take charge of the situation. Yeah, Rue. Just give me 1 second. No longer questioning the strange occurrences, Robert quickly scanned the abilities presented before him. After a few moments, he made his choice. I choose Power Strike, he muttered under his breath, hoping the gods could hear him and that Rue couldn't. The last thing he needed was to seem even more unhinged. Congratulations, you have become a warrior. You can check your information by simply saying or thinking display panel. The message vanished after a few seconds, revealing Rue's worried expression as he gazed at his grandfather. Robert sighed, about to tell his grandson they would head home when a sudden thought struck him. Rue should get this class thing too. He didn't fully understand his reasoning, but he instinctively felt that this was an opportunity he couldn't let Rue miss. The muscular man's words echoed in his ears. The end of the world is truly here. Considering the monsters he had encountered in the forest while cutting wood, and the fact that the intelligent creature had directed him to this place, Robert was nearly convinced that these classes would be crucial. Gaining such abilities could be a significant advantage for both of them. "Rue, can you touch the statue?" Robert asked with a warm smile. The little boy hesitated at first before nodding. As he placed his hand on the colossal sculpture, he suddenly yanked it back with a yelp. "Grandpa, I'm seeing words. What are these things?" "Calm down, little Rue," Robert said soothingly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Just follow what the words say." Rue swallowed hard and admitted, "This is scary." Despite his fear, he obeyed his grandpa's instructions without further complaint. Robert could feel Rue's trembling subside as the child focused. After standing in the pouring rain for half a minute, Rue looked back at the old man and announced, "I did what the words said. It says I am now a warrior." Robert nodded gravely before turning his attention back to the group of 6. Inexplicably, a large stone building had materialized on the other side of the plaza. It boasted a grand entrance and the exterior was adorned with decorative statues, which, upon closer inspection, were miniature versions of the sculptures encircling the square. 5 of the 6 individuals were seated outside, seemingly waiting. Nadia suddenly emerged from the building's entrance, a devious smile spread across her face. "Oh, hell no!" Seeing the woman's expression, Robert immediately grabbed Rue by the wrist and walked out of the plaza as quickly as he could. His many years of life experience had taught him that staying near people who practically radiated the word underworld was far from wise. Although dark clouds lingered above the village of Wolvendale, the downpour had mostly ceased. Thorian sniffed at his damp fur and realized that he couldn't meet his men reeking as he did. Placing a hand on his head, he called upon his magic to remedy the situation. Water ball. The spell struck Thorian with great force, but he managed to power through. As the jet of water washed over him, it deeply cleaned the skin and fur on his head and shoulders. Although this helped, the stench still reeked from the other parts of his body. Determined to rid himself of the odor, he extended his arm as far away as possible from his torso and aimed a water ball at his own chest. The force of the spell sent him tumbling a couple of steps backward, but Thorian quickly regained his balance. Resolute, he continued using his magical ability to cleanse every spot on his body. Reaching his back proved to be a challenge, but he twisted his arm and launched the spell at it, nearly dislocating his shoulder in the process. Despite the discomfort, Thorian's efforts paid off, leaving him feeling refreshed and free of the unpleasant odor. Finally, the smell is gone. Every cultivation session feels like eating a marrow cleansing pill, but with just the smell and none of the benefits. Now that he was presentable, Thorian set his sights on the forest. He made haste, traversing the muddy terrain with purpose as he moved toward the orcs. Upon entering the forest, the sound of powerful axes striking tree trunks echoed from every direction. Each orc was singularly focused on their task, their well-developed muscles tirelessly working to chop down trees with impressive speed. If they could use Power Strike, their speed would be even higher. Excited by the possibilities, he eagerly anticipated the day when the orcs would obtain their warrior classes. They were destined to become the most formidable tree cutters in the entire kingdom. Alas, for now, Thorian would have to be patient and wait for that day to come. Seeing that the orcs were performing their tasks flawlessly, Thorian continued his journey without uttering a word. In no time, he reached the wall, where he observed Magi hurling spell after spell from their watchtower and an enemy beyond. With a single, powerful leap, Thorian landed on the wall's ledge, gaining a full view of the battlefield. The Kobloids were engaged in combat with a pack of Chaskas, while the Kobold facing off against their enemy's evolved form, the formidable Tailmasher. This giant beast stood at 6 feet tall, almost towering over the kobold even while on all fours. Its muscular body was cloaked in thick, dark fur adorned with faint, glowing stripes. While regular chaskas had a single boulder at the end of their tails, the tailmasher was an even more fearsome creature. Its tail was split into 3 sections, each resembling a smaller, more agile boulder connected by sinewy, flexible tissue. The sight of this terrifying opponent only heightened the intensity of the battle. The tailmasher clenched its 3 tail sections into one massive boulder before swiftly whipping it at the kobold. Despite barely managing to block the attack using power strike to parry, the kobold was sent tumbling backward several steps, its arms bruised from the impact. As the beast lowered its head, poised to pounce once more, it was met with a barrage of magical spells. Like a volley of arrows, the combined forces of all 4 elements struck the tailmasher's face, halting its advance for a moment. The display of raw power and cooperation from the defenders was truly a sight to behold. Good combo. Silently commending the 4 magi, Thorian charged toward the evolved Chaska with an open palm. As he struck the beast, a fiery cone-shaped blast erupted from its back. The tailmasher roared in pain, but this only provided an opportunity for the kobold. "Catch this," the kobold cried out, as a blue light enveloped its axe. Gripping the weapon with both hands, it struck the beast, effortlessly slicing through the tailmasher's skin and flesh. This impressive display was made possible by the kobold's exceptional skill and the increased stats gained from leveling up its class. Indeed, the kobold's strength was in a league of its own. Wasting no time, Thorian launched a fireball at the tailmasher and charged in once more with an open palm. As the initial spell exploded, he followed up with a combustion touch, propelling the flaming beast into the air. "Good throw," the kobold laughed, sprinting after the airborne tailmasher. With a single leap, the kobold reached the creature and delivered an overhead slash, cleaving its chest open. As the beast plummeted to the ground, the magi in the watchtower unleashed their skills once more, bombarding it with a powerful 4-element barrage. Thorian also joined the fray, hurling an additional fireball of his own to ensure the tailmasher's defeat. As the dust settled, the kobold shouted triumphantly, a wide smile across its face. "It's dead. I just leveled up." Thorian's expression remained unchanged, his focus shifting to the rest of the battlefield where the kobolds continued to battle the Chaskas. The 4 warriors were giving it their all to hold their ground against the relentless onslaught, but the powerful boulder strikes from the overgrown cats proved too formidable for them to handle. Thorian hurried toward the Chaskas, closely followed by the kobold, who clicked his tongue in anticipation. With his allies in such close proximity to the enemies, Thorian couldn't risk using his combustion touch skill. Instead, he relied on his brute strength and agility, pummeling the Chaskas with relentless punches before slashing them open with his claws. The kobold proved to be even more effective, employing his power strike skill and superior combat abilities to quickly overwhelm the Chaskas, felling them with his axe. The arrival of Thorian and the kobold quickly turned the tide of battle. The beleaguered warrior kobolds, who had been steadily losing ground, found renewed strength and began pushing back their foes. In a matter of minutes, the pack of Chaskas lay defeated, thanks to the combined efforts of Thorian and his allies. With the monsters defeated, Thorian surveyed the battlefield before assessing the condition of the wall. It was battered, having sustained damage from sharp blades and blunt objects alike. Thorian wouldn't be surprised if it were breached again in the near future. "Let's head back inside," Thorian instructed. "I need a report on what transpired during these past 2 hours." "A report?" the kobold asked, a puzzled expression on his face. "What's that?" Once more confronted with the ignorance of his new allies, Thorian took a deep breath and replied, "Let's return to the village first, and then we can discuss it." As the group of white-furred creatures and Thorian climbed the wall and re-entered the village, Thorian clarified, "A report is an update on important information." "Tell me who leveled up, How many times, if anyone was injured, or if there's anything significant that I should be aware of. All of us leveled up, boss, one of the Kobold warriors reported with a chuckle. I've already leveled up 3 times in both my species and class. I'm getting so close to an evolution. Same here, another Kobold chimed in. Thorian recognized him as the one who placed second in the woodcutting competition. We're all getting stronger. Just a few more levels and we'll become a true army. Like they said, the Kobold grinned. Everyone leveled up, even me. My warrior level is 15, and my species is now level 3. That's excellent progress on all fronts, Thorian nodded in approval. Then, turning his attention to the Magi descending the watchtower stairs, he asked, "What about you? What's your level?" "We're now level 13 in both," the Wind Magus replied with a chuckle. "Choosing this class was the best decision, we level up so quickly." The Fire Magus nodded in agreement. "We just have to hit the monster from far and we get all the experience. It's so good." "You guys have it too easy," one of the warriors commented. "If I were a Magus like you, I would have already evolved." "Is that jealousy I'm hearing?" the Wind Magus retorted as the other Magi laughed. While the Kobolds chatted and bantered with one another, a thought that Thorian had pushed to the back of his mind since his reincarnation resurfaced. "All of you need names." "Names? Why do we need names?" The Kobold raised an eyebrow at Thorian's unexpected proposition. The other Kobolds also stared at Thorian, their eyebrows furrowed, clearly not understanding the purpose of his suggestion. Thorian let out a sigh before explaining, "Imagine one of your comrades is injured while battling a monster. How would you inform me about it?" "I would tell you that he was injured." The Kobold replied, the incredulity in his voice unmistakable. Hearing his subordinate's reply, Thorian clicked his tongue and said, "And how would I know who he is?" "It could be anyone." The Kobold's expression froze, and after a few seconds, he looked away in embarrassment. The other Kobolds also began murmuring amongst themselves, their confusion shifting to intrigue. The stocky warrior raised his hand and said, "But we will know who got injured when we bring everyone together." "That only works when we're this small," Thorian immediately responded. "When we become 100, 1,000, or even more, do we need to gather all of us together just to know who we're talking about?" Hearing the explanation, the Kobold cleared his throat and said, "I understand. These names seem very important. Will you be the one giving them to us?" "Yes, I will name you first." Thorian nodded and scratched his chin in thought before an idea came to him. "You are a strong moon Kobold. From now on, your name shall be Forlun, which means strong moon in the ancient language." Hearing the meaning of his name, the Kobold grinned. "Forlun, I like that name. A strong name for a strong warrior." The Kobolds cheered and roared as the Kobold received his name, causing Forlun to blush slightly. "Congratulations, Forlun," one of the warriors slapped the Kobold's back with a hearty laugh. "You got a good name." As the Kobolds cheerfully joked around with one another, Thorian's eyes shifted toward the Magi. "They're the easiest to name, I will just use their elements." "You, Fire Magus," Thorian pointed at one of the Magi. "Your name shall be Ifrit." The Fire Magus was initially confused, but his expression quickly morphed into joy. "That is a great name." "Thank you, King." Thorian then named the rest of the Magi Ventus, Aqua, and Saxum, respectively. Each name represented the element of the skill they possessed. Turning his attention back to the Kobold warriors who were expectantly waiting for their names, Thorian let out a sigh. "This is truly spreading my creative spirit thin." Thorian pointed at the warrior who had placed second after Forlun in the woodcutting competition. "Your name shall be Kadar." Kadar smiled and nodded gratefully at the name he had been given. Thorian then looked at the rest of the warriors, bestowing them with names as follows: Bellafor, Kryman, and Inley. After finishing his naming spree, Thorian took a deep breath. This is even harder than slaughtering a full army of orcs. King, thank you for gifting us these names. Kadar, the stocky warrior, took a deep breath and expressed his gratitude. Thank you, King. The rest of the Kobloids followed. Seeing all the Kobloids bowing down to Thorian, Forlun was flustered before he too joined them and bowed down. Raise your heads, Thorian ordered with a relaxed voice. I need to take a look around the village and see what Nox has been doing. He can't possibly protect all sides with just the small team that he has. Horian shared his thoughts aloud, and upon hearing them, Forlun suggested they retreat to a more private location. With a nod of agreement, Thorian addressed the team of Kobloids. All of you take a breather. Pace yourselves throughout the night to avoid dying from exhaustion. Leaving his instructions echoing behind, Thorian followed Forlun through the trees. After a short walk, they were sufficiently distant from the rest to have a private conversation. So, you wanted to discuss something? Thorian inquired. Yes, indeed, Forlun affirmed. It's about the humans. When are we going to kill them? We need to complete that quest. It's too good to pass up. Yes, it is. And we will kill as many as we need, Thorian agreed. But doing it now will be a truly foolish thing to do. Forlun's brows knitted together in confusion. Why is that? If the humans are like the ones we captured earlier, we could kill thousands of them without any problem. The humans aren't the issue. They're disposable, Thorian explained, shaking his head. Our problem lies in leaving our territory unprotected. There would be no one to oversee the orcs. Even if they behaved, other monsters might intrude and wreak havoc on everything we've built. His gaze shifted towards the village hall. I don't mind if they damage the wall. We can repair it. But if they infiltrate, demolish the village hall, and kill Melina, we would be in serious jeopardy. Forlun asked in confusion. Why? Can't we just repair it or build another one? With the orcs helping us, we can gather enough wood very quickly. It's not about the hall. It's about Melina, Thorian sighed. If she dies, we'll have to wait an entire month for a replacement. That means a full month without village hall quests, since there won't be anyone to authorize them. Forlun was taken aback, and after processing Thorian's explanation, he curiously asked, How do you know all this? I have my ways, Thorian cryptically replied, allowing no room for further questions. Seeing Forlun avert his gaze, Thorian softened his tone. That doesn't mean we're disregarding the human quest. We just need to prepare appropriately first. Forlun seemed reassured by this. And what would those be? Thorian detailed his plans. Firstly, we need to properly man all gates to fend off monster hordes. Then, we need our tribe to evolve. The third and fourth steps involve integrating the orcs and recruiting more monsters to our cause, ideally other Kobloids and Kobolds. Forlun took a moment before recalling, there was a pack of brown Kobloids earlier, but they fled when they saw us. So brown Kobloids are nearby. That is good to hear. Thorian nodded. It's good to know they're close. We should try to recruit them if possible. He then delved deeper into his strategy. Once we integrate them, we need to help them evolve into formidable warriors. Finally, we need to fortify the village walls and defenses. Only when all of these steps are complete will I consider our village relatively secure. That is a lot of preparations, Forlun observed. It is, Thorian agreed. But it's our best course of action. This village is worth more than 1,000 human quests. Chasing after the human quests is like going after a single gold ingot, a one-time reward. The village, however, is like a gold mine providing a steady income. It allows us to acquire new skills, discover rare evolution paths, and these benefits are continuous. I see what you mean, Forlun admitted, scratching the back of his head. So, what should I be doing now? Focus on hunting, Thorian advised. Your teammates, not yet evolved, will have a greater evolutionary advantage thanks to their classes. To maintain your power ranking, hunt more than them, and keep leveling up. Compensate for any lack in powerful skills with superior stats. Thorlin's expression paled. To the moon kobold with pure white fur, the change was startling. Don't be intimidated, Thorian counseled. Fear and doubt will only lead to mistakes. You need to trust that your hard work will yield results, even when you witness the power shift among your comrades. Stay focused, keep hunting, and keep honing your skills. Taking a moment to digest the advice, Thorlin nodded. I understand, Thorian. Thank you for your counsel. You're welcome, Thorian replied with a smile, patting the moon kobold's shoulder. Now go, do what you need to do. Thorlin nodded and strode off towards the rest of his team. Thorian watched him go, reassured by Thorlin's steady, confident stride. Satisfied with their discussion and the progress in this part of the village, Thorian turned his attention to the wall. He quickly scaled it, positioning himself on the ledge. This gave him an advantageous vantage point to scout the perimeter of their settlement. Monster corpses littered the ground beyond the walls. At first, the corpses were mostly charred with fireballs and hacked by the warriors' axes, but as Thorian continued to walk, the wounds became much less obvious. Some had their throats slit, while others had their backs hacked by axes. This was the work of the assassins. However, the wall was far from spotless. Cracks, chips, and dents adorned it in a constant stream, revealing the efforts of the monsters trying to break in from all sides. As Thorian walked for a few minutes, he noticed movement far in the distance. Goblins were using ropes to scale the wooden wall. What is Nox doing? Thorian clicked his tongue as he conjured a water ball and launched it toward the 3 climbing goblins. The green creatures screamed as they fell onto their backs. Combustion touch. In less than a second, Thorian leaped toward the falling goblins and struck the first one with his flaming fist. The water from the water ball evaporated, creating a small mist, while the green body of the creature turned charred and black. Fortunately, Thorian's flame resistance protected him from the scorching mist, making it feel only slightly warm. He glanced around to see the other 2 goblins running in opposite directions. You think you can escape? Eager to test the proficiency of his new skill, Thorian launched a water ball at one of the fleeing creatures before chasing after the other with lethal intent. He slashed the goblin's back with his claws, eliciting one final scream as it fell to the ground. Thorian crushed its skull with a single stomp, ending its life. Like an unfeeling machine, Thorian turned around to look at the other fleeing creature, only to find it lying on the ground. Its clothes were torn to shreds, and its skin was wounded from the water ball's impact. Thorian rushed toward the weakened creature and stabbed through its chest with his claws, crushing its heart in his grip. Whether that was a testament to his strength or the frailty of the goblin could not be determined. Having eliminated all the goblins that had been attempting to infiltrate the village, Thorian looked back at the walls. To his surprise, he spotted another one of the green creatures standing on the ledge. The goblin's knees shook as it took in the grisly scene Thorian had created, before it hastily descended the rope into the village. However, Thorian was not in the mood to let the creature escape and engage in a cat-and-mouse game. With swift strides, he rushed toward the wall and scaled it in a single leap. Looking down, he could see the goblin had just barely descended the wall and was about to rush into the dense patch of trees. You're too slow. Thorian conjured a water ball and launched it at the fleeing green monster. The impact from the spell sent the creature soaring through the air, screaming for its life. Without wasting another second, Thorian conjured a fireball and engulfed the unfortunate monster in its flames. Was he the only one inside? No, I need to make sure. Thorian took a deep breath and focused on his sense of smell. The scent of flames and the corpses littered around the village were overwhelming, but as he concentrated, Thorian could make out subtle differences. After a few seconds, his keen nose was able to sift through the stronger odors and detect the scent of the escaping goblins within the village. There are 3 of them. No, 4, From the goblin's scent, Thorian knew they were running as a single pack, which would make it easy for him to track them down. Sneering at their obvious mistake, Thorian rushed through the trees and tall grass at his top speed. In less than a minute, the odor of the goblins became more distinct. Thorian emerged from the patch of trees to find a group of 4 goblins running through the open space in the center of the village. Upon noticing that Thorian had caught up with them, all but one of the creatures turned and brandished their stone daggers. The last goblin simply stared at the flame kobold in horror, slowly inching backward while the rest of its kin prepared to launch their final attack. Weak little things. Thorian waited until the green creatures rushed toward him before conjuring a fireball and launching it at the incoming goblins. The spell instantly took out the first attacker, sending its charred body flying between its 2 comrades. The duo glanced back at their fallen kin before Thorian rushed forward, grabbed them by their heads, and smashed them together. Combustion touch. The goblins' facial orifices burst into flames under the influence of Thorian's spell, and they were quickly engulfed in the ensuing explosion. Their bodies didn't even have time to thrash, as their nervous systems were seared by the intense heat. With only 1 goblin remaining, Thorian charged at the last survivor, determined to finish the job. However, just as he reached the goblin, the creature immediately dropped to its knees and began shrieking. "Ski! Shri!" Seeing the quivering goblin kneeling down and begging for mercy, Thorian conjured a fireball and was about to launch it when a thought crossed his mind. Wait. It might be useful. After a few seconds of contemplation, Thorian launched his fireball next to the goblin, causing it to yelp in fear. Its horrified eyes met Thorian's for a moment before it pressed its head to the ground, not daring to maintain eye contact. "Why should I keep you alive?" Thorian asked, immediately regretting his decision to speak. "Shri, ski! Ski, ski!" The goblin looked up and passionately explained all the reasons it deemed sufficient to keep it alive. Unfortunately, Thorian couldn't understand any of them. Watching the creature try its hardest to convince him, Thorian grinned in amusement. "Interesting, this is quite the lively goblin. I can have it chop wood alongside the orcs." As the goblin remained focused on Thorian's expression, trying to decipher its fate, Thorian glanced at the village hall behind it. The kobolds gained proper language once they became citizens. Maybe it will too? With a plan in mind, Thorian looked back at the goblin and said, "Follow me." Those 2 words were like an angel's choir to the green creature, as it smiled in happiness and relief. As Thorian strode toward the village hall, it excitedly followed behind him. "Hello, Melina." Thorian entered the hall and greeted the elven lady. "I have an unusual guest for you today." Melina furrowed her eyebrows in confusion and inquired, "Who would that be, my lord?" Her question was soon answered as the goblin entered through the door, an ugly grin plastered across its face. Melina's confusion only deepened as she looked at Thorian and asked, "Did you bring this goblin to become a citizen, my lord?" Thorian simply nodded in response. The elf opened her mouth to say something, but as emotions conflicted within her eyes, she couldn't find the words and closed it. "Go to Melina," Thorian ordered the goblin. "And follow her instructions properly." "Shri! Shri!" The goblin nodded with over-the-top enthusiasm. It then walked with careful strides toward the elf before stopping at her desk. Melina, still shocked by the events unfolding around her, absent-mindedly retrieved the stamp and parchments from beneath her desk and began the procedure. As with the kobolds, the goblin punctured its thumb with the needle in the stamp and pressed its bloodied finger at the bottom of the parchment. The piece of paper disintegrated into specks of light before being absorbed by the goblin's body. "Huh? What was that? Magic?" Hearing the goblin's squeaky voice, Thorian grinned. "That makes it official. Any monster that becomes a citizen gains the ability to speak." The possibilities this discovery unlocked raged within Thorian's mind. With this ability, creating a monster kingdom would not be a dream. Good, now that you have learned how to speak, you will go and cut the trees alongside the rest of the orcs. Thorian immediately turned around and walked out of the village hall, expecting no complaint or retort against his order. The goblin nodded and followed him without hesitation. As the two were walking toward the dense patch of trees where the orcs were chopping wood, the goblin cautiously asked for Thorian's attention. "Master, forgive me, but may I ask you one thing?" the goblin inquired. Thorian furrowed his eyebrows at the goblin's servile attitude. "Speak." "Thank you, master," the goblin said, rubbing its hands together and smiling. "I believe I can be more useful to you than just by chopping wood. I came from a large tribe. I can show you where our cave is." Thorian stopped dead in his tracks at the goblin's words before looking back at it with furrowed eyebrows. The little green creature had a smile plastered on its face as it gazed at Thorian. This little thing, Thorian thought, raising an eyebrow in surprise. Is it really willing to sacrifice its tribe to gain favor with me? As Thorian stared at the cunning little goblin, the image of his great-uncle Aldrich superimposed itself onto the green creature. The more he gazed at it, the more vividly he recalled the treacherous smirk on his betrayer's face in those final moments. "Shri! I'm sorry." The goblin's high-pitched shriek and desperate plea shattered Thorian's illusion. The diminutive green creature retreated, quivering with fear. Glancing down, Thorian realized that he had clenched his fist so tightly that his claws had punctured his own palm. As for his facial expression, it was so menacing that the terrified creature couldn't help but beg for its life. "Don't lose your temper, he can be useful." Thorian took a deep breath and relaxed before looking back at the goblin with a neutral expression. "What's your name?" The goblin stuttered for a few seconds, regaining his composure before answering. "My given name is Scabrixbride, but everyone calls me Brix." Thorian nodded. "Brix, you will now go and chop trees with the orcs. Is that understood?" "Yes. Yes, of course." Brix nodded enthusiastically, relieved that the situation had de-escalated. With that brief exchange, Thorian turned and continued walking through the central part of the village. However, just as they entered a patch of trees, Thorian's stomach let out a rumbling growl. Surprised by his body's natural reaction, Thorian glanced down at his stomach. "Ah, I haven't eaten anything in the past 2 days." Thorian grimaced as he recalled the taste of blood on his tongue. His bestial instincts urged him to hunt and consume his prey's raw flesh, but Thorian refused to let them overpower him. What kind of sick joke is this? The head of the Steelblade family eating like a savage animal? While his pride dictated his course of action, reality offered Thorian few alternatives. It was either continuous starvation or swallowing his pride. However, as he looked back at the wary Brix following him, an idea sparked in Thorian's mind. "Wait, goblins do eat cooked meat." "Brix," Thorian gestured at the goblin with his head. "Do you have any experience cooking meat?" "Cooking meat?" Brix furrowed his eyebrows in confusion before nodding hastily. "Yes, of course I can cook. I can prepare the best meals around." "Good," Thorian nodded with a slight smile. "There aren't any utensils around, so I'll need you to be creative. The Thumpalope's meat should still be safe to cook. It's only been a few hours since I killed them." "Thumpalopes, master?" Brix asked hesitantly. "They're large rabbits with twisted goat horns," Thorian explained as he continued walking forward. "Have you never seen them before?" "No, I've never seen them." Brix shook his head and followed Thorian. The two veered away from the direction of the orcs and headed to the right. "But they sound delicious." Brix attempted a laugh to break the ice, but Thorian merely glanced at him with a neutral expression. The goblin awkwardly ceased his laughter and stiffened his posture, maintaining a safe distance as he trailed behind Thorian. "You'll skin them, clean them, prepare them, and cook them," Thorian instructed. "My men have been eating their prey raw, but they need to experience the true delicacy of a cooked meal. Make it good." Of course, Master, Brix nodded enthusiastically. Once they taste my cooking, they'll never want to go back to eating raw meat again. Thorian remained silent and continued walking forward. After about a minute of traversing along the tree line, the pair finally reached the village wall. This should be the spot. Thorian turned to Brix and said, "Take my hand." The goblin hesitated at first but ultimately accepted Thorian's offer. The flame kobold gripped Brix firmly before leaping atop the wall ledge in a single bound. As they landed, the goblin yelped and exclaimed, "Master is truly strong." However, Thorian paid him no heed. He knew that Brix was only trying to flatter him because of the precarious situation he found himself in. Instead, Thorian focused on the scene before him, where the dozens of thumpelopes should have been lying dead. Wait, something is wrong. Instead of dozens of giant rabbits, Thorian could only see 5 of the large creatures scattered on the ground. Did some thieving scavengers come and take them? Thorian grimaced in annoyance before leaping off the wall on his own. One by one, he gathered the dead thumpelopes and tossed them inside the village. However, as he reached the last one, an idea crossed his mind, and a grin spread across his face. I should leave this one as bait. Let's see who these thieving rats are. With his plan in mind, Thorian jumped back up the wall and brought Brix down with him. As they reached the ground, Thorian issued his command, "I want you to cook all of these rabbits in the center of the village. I don't care how you do it or where you get your tools from, but if you burn them or make something inedible, you won't have a good time. Understood?" Brix recoiled at the order initially, but quickly changed his expression and nodded nervously. "Yes, I understand, Master. Don't worry, I will cook them properly." "Good, now go." With that final command, Brix grabbed one of the giant rabbits by the leg and dragged it behind him with all his strength. The thumpelopes were almost as tall as the goblins, but they were thicker and fluffier. The small creature struggled to pull a beast that was significantly heavier than its own body weight. While Brix hauled the thumpelope to the center of the village, Thorian leaped back up onto the village wall. He cast one last glance at Brix and smirked. If he tries to escape, then so be it. He will just be food to the monsters roaming the forest. With that final thought, Thorian shifted his focus to his next objective, meeting up with Nox. He immediately began running atop the wall, keeping an eye on both the inside and outside of the village for any unnatural disturbances. The last thing he wanted was for monsters to sneak inside the walls and launch an attack on his men from behind. After a few minutes of tireless sprinting, the sounds of battle caught Thorian's attention. He instantly increased his speed, and before long, he reached the battlefield. A pack of 20 Rebarians was engaged in combat with a similarly sized group of brown cobloids, led by a couple of kobolds. However, the latter were at a distinct disadvantage. Only the evolved kobolds could strengthen their hide with their skills to counter the Rebarians' red aura punches, while the cobloids merely served as punching bags. However, this disadvantage was short-lived, as a silhouette lunged from the shadows. A tall kobold with midnight black fur and silver streaks shimmering under the moonlight moved with dizzying speed. In a moment, his body was enveloped in shadows and a dark aura, which then spread and struck a couple of Rebarians. The shadowy aura coated the white humanoid rabbits from head to toe, and the dark kobold struck them with his axe, cleaving them in half with each slash. Is that Nox? Thorian thought, his face etched with disbelief. But that's not the appearance of a night kobold. Those streaks. Is he a shadow stalker? Just as Thorian finished the thought, 3 more kobolds emerged from the shadows. Their fur was a pristine silvery white, and their lithe figures showcased their astounding agility. They too had streaks covering their bodies, but this time they were dark ones. The moment the trio touched the ground, their feet shone with brilliant light before they darted across the battlefield. They were like unrelenting arrows claiming the lives of the Rebarians with each strike. Their opponents simply could not fight back, as the Silver Kobold's speed left no room for counterattacks. Thorian watched with bated breath as the tide of the battle turned in their favor. Nox and his 3 assassins made quick work of the remaining Rebarians, their precise strikes and agile movements leaving no room for resistance. The brown Kobloids, inspired by their allies' display, pushed their advantage and began to overwhelm the rabbit humanoids. The last of the Rebarians, sensing their impending defeat, fled the battlefield with their tails between their legs. As the dust settled, Nox called out, "Priests, come and heal our friends." The wooden gate opened and the 2 priest Kobloids walked out. They made their way toward the brown Kobloids that were bruised and injured from the Rebarians' powerful strikes. While the priests were tending to the wounded, Nox approached the 2 brown kobolds, a grin spreading across his face. "You got beaten quite a bit, you all right?" he teased. One brown kobold chuckled, flexing his muscles. Nothing. Beating more." The other kobold also used his brown aura technique to showcase his tough body, rabbit weak. "No injuries." The 3 kobolds laughed heartily at their jokes. Thorian, still standing atop the wall, stared at the scene below in a daze. A wave of elation washed over him as he realized the significance of Nox's accomplishment. The Shadowstalker had managed to forge friendly relationships with the brown Kobloids and kobolds, which was a great boon to their tribe. "Nox, you've genuinely surprised me. I never assumed you as the diplomatic type." Thorian's smile broadened as he reflected on how efficiently his preparation plans were unfolding. "With this surge of new brown Kobloids and kobolds, we have more than enough manpower to guard all the gates. The evolution of Nox and the assassins also means we're making significant progress toward completing the second step of our village stabilization plan." As Thorian's thoughts raced, the brown Kobloids began to notice the figure standing on the wall, illuminated by the moonlight. They murmured in a mix of awe and fear, "Flame Kobold." The whispers soon reached Nox, the assassins, and the brown kobolds, who all turned their gazes toward Thorian. The air filled with reverence and curiosity. Nox's eyes lit up with excitement as he recognized Thorian. He beckoned to the 3 assassins, and together they approached their leader. "Thorian, we won!" Nox exclaimed in his innocent, youthful tone. Thorian smiled, pride swelling in his chest. "You all did an excellent job." He then glanced at his evolved comrades, who now matched his height, their lithe figures perfectly complementing their agile nature. "You have come a long way too. The other Kobloids are still far from evolving." "That's all thanks to Boss Nox," one of the silver-white kobold assassins exclaimed. "Boss Nox is really the best," another added with a chuckle. Thorian tilted his head in confusion before focusing on Nox, who was scratching the back of his head in embarrassment. "I didn't do much." "You guys all worked hard," Nox said modestly. Hearing Nox's meek voice, the first silvery white kobold who had spoken earlier immediately jumped on top of him and playfully scratched his furry head. "Stop being so humble, Boss Nox." While the 2 were messing around, the last assassin who hadn't spoken yet looked at Thorian and explained, "Boss Nox gave us all the kills after he evolved. That's how we leveled up so fast." "His skill really helped too," the second assassin added. "When he places his shadows on the monsters, our axes can cut through them with ease." "A damage amplifier skill?" Thorian furrowed his eyebrows as he tried to remember the Shadowstalker's skills. "Oh, Shadow's Embrace, I forgot about that skill." Thorian couldn't help but grin at the possibilities that had just been unlocked. Having access to a damage amplifier skill was something he never expected to happen so soon. "I've said it before, and I'll say it again, you all have done an amazing job. Your growth has been remarkable." Thorian praised the assassin unit, his eyes lingering on Nox, whose expression betrayed his delight. Thorian then shifted his gaze toward the brown kobolds, and he couldn't help but frown slightly in confusion. "But how did you meet these new friends?" It's a funny story, boss. The assassin who had been scratching Nox's head hopped off his back and laughed. We found them trying to steal those rabbits we had killed earlier. But just as we were about to have a word with them, a bunch of goblins came out from the woods and ambushed them. While the overly excited assassin explained what happened, Thorian couldn't help but think, well, that at least solves the Thumpalope's mystery. The silver-white kobold looked at Nox with a teasing grin before continuing his explanation. Boss Nox wanted us to help them because they're kobolds like us, so we did. And before we knew it, we were already making jokes and becoming friends. Nox grumbled at the assassin's teasing tone before adding, they didn't seem like bad guys, they just wanted food. Plus, they helped us a lot after we teamed up. That they did. The third assassin, who was usually quiet, nodded in agreement with Nox's statement before letting out a sigh. Guarding the wall became so much easier with more people. As the assassins talked amongst themselves and explained the situation, Thorian decided not to interrupt. By staying quiet, he could gain a deeper understanding of the nuances of the situation. Nox and the silvery kobolds then explained their strategy with the brown kobolds. The bulk of their small army was situated in front of the southern gate where they were currently located, diametrically opposite to Forlun, who was near the northern gate. Nox and the assassins could leave the task of guarding this part of the wall mostly to the brown kobolds while they scouted the southeast and southwest sides. It was only when dealing with truly strong opponents, like the Rebarians, that all of them would concentrate their efforts in one spot. That explains why things have been going relatively smoothly. I expected at least one big hole in the wall after spending 2 hours cultivating my chi. Seeing Nox and the assassins being so dependable filled Thorian with a mixture of pride and relief. Having competent people beside him who wouldn't require his input for every decision was something he hadn't expected so soon. And witnessing these kobolds, who he had initially dismissed as weak creatures, transform into reliable subordinates was a pleasant surprise. Nevertheless, while he appreciated Nox's actions, Thorian still couldn't fully trust the brown kobolds. As he observed them, he formulated a plan. I should make them citizens, but they shouldn't get a class yet. Let's wait and see where their hearts truly lie. Noticing Thorian's gaze on the brown kobolds, Nox shifted his attention to his two newfound friends and called for them to join. Brown kobolds, come here. As the two approached after being healed by the priest, Nox introduced them. This is Thorian, our king. Like I told you before, he was the one who made us strong. One of the brown kobolds nodded at Nox's admiration-filled explanation before staring at Thorian, wide-eyed. You, flame kobold? He asked, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. Thorian furrowed his eyebrows at the unexpected question before nodding. Yes, I am. The other brown kobold chimed in, excitement laced in his words, flame kobold strong. Me saw one. Powerful. Although the kobold's fragmented sentences were difficult to decipher, Thorian had grown accustomed to them after spending a full night with Nox before he became a citizen. However, it was the meaning behind their words that truly puzzled him. You saw a flame kobold before? Where? Back home, the brown kobold responded with a reminiscing look. Flame kobold many killed. Forest all fire. Back home, huh? Thorian scratched his chin in thought. So like those people that appear with the buildings, these monsters have come from another world? Although Thorian was curious to learn more, now wasn't the time for such a discussion. He had more pressing matters to attend to. Do you like your stay here? Thorian asked a probing question, cautiously observing the brown kobold's facial expressions. Me like. The first brown kobold laughed heartily. Me hunt, me eat. Nox no take food. Nox friend. The other kobold also lightly chuckled without saying anything. Seeing the two's genuine attitude, Thorian slightly relaxed. While the possibility that they were only faking their expressions was always present, kobolds were not known for their cunning nature. They were usually painfully honest creatures. If you like it here, then why don't you become true citizens? Thorian proposed. It will give you many benefits. Great idea, Nox excitedly remarked. They can speak better then. It will make it so much easier to talk. Citizens? The brown kobold furrowed his eyebrows before looking at Nox for advice. Good? Yeah, it's very good, the Shadowstalker nodded with excitement. It will help us a lot. Nox say good. Good. The other brown kobold heartily laughed. Citizen become. Thorian led the two brown kobolds back to the village hall, where they would be officially initiated as citizens. Melina, the elegant elven lady responsible for handling citizenship matters, greeted them with a warm smile. Ah, my lord, more citizens to join our ranks, she inquired, her voice soft and melodic, betraying an air of familiarity with the various creatures that had approached her desk that day. Thorian noticed the subtle change in her demeanor but chose not to remark upon it. Instead, he glanced back at the two brown kobolds, who were curiously surveying their surroundings. Yes, these two fine gentlemen have expressed a desire to join our community. Citizen, here? One of the brown kobolds asked, venturing further into the hall, his eyes wide with wonder. Yes, please come here, Melina gently beckoned the two brown creatures to her desk, where she had already prepared the stamp needle and citizenship parchments. After pricking their thumbs with the needle and pressing the parchments with their blood, the two kobolds became official citizens. As the golden dust settled, their eyes cleared, and they gazed at Melina and Thorian. Did we become citizens now? One of them inquired. Yeah, was that it? The other chimed in. Thorian chuckled lightly at the exchange before nodding. Yes, you are now true citizens of Wolvendale Village. Congratulations. Oh, I can understand you clearly now, the brown kobold remarked, raising his eyebrows in surprise, his companion mirroring his reaction. Well, the feeling is mutual, Thorian replied before turning toward the door. Let's return to the gates. We'll need the rest of your group to come here as well. The two kobolds nodded and followed Thorian outside the hall. As they meandered through the quaint village, one of the kobolds couldn't resist asking, is there more to this citizenship? There are additional benefits, but those will come later, Thorian explained, not breaking stride. For now, simply being able to communicate effectively is more than enough. Isn't it better now that you can fully understand me? That is indeed true, the kobold acknowledged. You seem wise, Flame Kobold, much like the elders back in our cave. My name is Thorian. You may address me by my name, the Flame Kobold said, casting a brief glance at the two before continuing. And what cave are you referring to? It's our little home in this new world, the brown kobold revealed with a sigh. Our entire tribe lives there, under the rule of our chief. Thorian nodded, allowing a brief silence to settle between them as they continued their walk. He could sense the somber mood in the air. Were there issues within your tribe? He finally inquired, prompting a long sigh from the brown kobold. Of course there were. The chief took half our food. He clicked his tongue and shook his head, clearly disheartened by the memory. Observing his friend's agitation, the other kobold chimed in, that fat bastard, his body could feed the entire tribe. As the two conversed and exchanged jests, Thorian asked a more pointed question, is your chief strong? The response was a mere gulp. The two kobolds fell silent, but their reticence spoke volumes to Thorian. He looked ahead, realizing they were nearing the southern gate, where the two priests stood on standby beside the watchtowers. This is a heaven-sent opportunity, Thorian mused, scratching his furred chin in contemplation. If their chief is such a tyrant that his own men would rather remain with strangers than return to him, their entire tribe will soon crumble. A sly grin tugged at the corner of Thorian's mouth. And when that happens, I'll be there to capitalize. If we're lucky, we can bring in enough new blood to fulfill the requirements for the village upgrade. The clamor of battle reached Thorian's ears even before he opened the gate. Outside, the brown Kobloids were locked in combat with a horde of goblins, commanded by spear-wielding hobgoblins. Nox and the three assassins dealt with the more formidable green adversaries, while the brown Kobloids managed to overwhelm the smaller, weaker goblins. As the battle drew to a close, Thorian and the two brown kobolds approached Nox and the assassins. "Ah, Thorian!" Nox exclaimed in his innocent voice, noticing his king. His eyes flicked to the brown kobolds. "And you too? Did you become citizens?" "Yes, we did," the two brown kobolds replied, chuckling as they strode toward Nox. Thorian could see how much more at ease they were in the company of the guileless shadow stalker. "It's so much easier to understand you now. My head hurt whenever we talked before." "Same here, my friend. It was so difficult to understand you too," Nox laughed along before turning to Thorian. "So, what should we do next?" Thorian surveyed the battlefield. As usual, the priests moved among the brown Kobloids, tending to the wounded. Meanwhile, the three silvery-white assassins sat on the ground, catching their breath. With a strategy forming in his mind, Thorian turned to Nox and explained, "I need you to instruct the three assassins to escort the brown Kobloids to the village hall, where they can become citizens. The four of us, along with the two priests, will remain here to guard the wall." "Ah, we're going to fight together?" Nox's face lit up at Thorian's words. "Yes. It's been so long." Thorian chuckled at his followers' endearing reaction. "What do you mean it's been so long? It has been just a little over 2 hours." "Yeah, but I wasn't evolved back then. Now I can show you my true skills." Nox replied excitedly, while the two brown kobolds chuckled at the exchange. The Shadow Stalker then turned toward the three assassins and declared, "I'll go tell them to get moving. Their break has been long enough." As Nox strode toward the group of assassins, Thorian took a moment to clear his thoughts and devise a plan for the future. Stabilizing the village is extremely important, but I should not ever forget my personal growth. Without holding formidable power, all my efforts in raising the territory would be in vain. As for the village, while we don't have enough registered citizens yet, we can still upgrade the statues to proper guilds. Absorbed in his contemplations, Thorian glanced around to see the pack of Kobloids following the three assassins into the village. The final part of the plan is assimilation. We need to reach 100 registered citizens to upgrade the village, but those citizens need to be naturalized with the rest of the tribe. As their comrades passed through the gate, the two brown kobolds sidled up to Thorian and inquired, "Is there something we need to do now that we're citizens?" "Share our food?" "Everything you hunt is yours," Thorian chuckled. "You'll have so much food, you won't know what to do with it all." As Thorian and the two kobolds bantered playfully, the brown Kobloids filed into the village and the gates closed. Nox, who had been attentively monitoring the operation, returned to the trio. Thorian glanced at the approaching black kobold and remarked, "Good timing. We were just about to discuss our defense strategy." "Oh? That sounds interesting." "Strategy." Unfazed by Nox's childlike enthusiasm, Thorian voiced his concerns. "Our current approach to defense is, at best, clumsy. Concentrating most of our military force at the two poles while leaving our east and west sides virtually unprotected is unwise. Should we then split the two groups in half?" one of the brown kobolds suggested. "That way, we can put one team in the west and the other in the east." "That's one possibility," Thorian acknowledged. "But the north side has its own challenges to contend with, and dividing their forces might invite more trouble than we're prepared to handle. There are still the orcs on that side. I cannot be naive and weaken the north. I believe the two of you should manage the west and the east," Thorian proposed, catching the brown kobolds off guard. "You'll divide your pack in half, and each of you will oversee one side." The pair exchanged glances before shrugging. Since the Kobloids have leveled up a lot, we shouldn't have trouble against weaker creatures like goblins. But if a large horde of them appears or we face really strong monsters, I'm not sure we can handle them on our own. You don't need to worry about that, Thorian reassured them with a smile. The way you've been handling the defense hasn't been very strategic. Typically, an army should stand behind the wall, not in front of it. You should only venture out if you're confident you can manage the threats beyond. But how do we see what's happening outside from behind the wall? The brown kobold inquired, puzzled by Thorian's line of thinking. You can use those, Thorian indicated the 2 watchtowers flanking the gate. By climbing the watchtowers, you can get a clear view of what's happening outside without exposing yourselves to unnecessary danger. Oh, truly wise and knowledgeable, the brown kobold marveled at the watchtowers before praising Thorian. I don't think even the elders would have known such a thing. This is nothing for Thorian, he knows everything, Nox responded, pride swelling in his voice as if Thorian's accomplishments were his own. Thorian dismissed the excessive compliments with a shake of his head. Then, his ears caught a sound from the forest. His eyes immediately shifted toward the shadowy woods in the distance, where a tall silhouette emerged from beyond the trees. It had a lithe, inhuman figure, with a diminutive core and torso that contrasted with its length and size. Its limbs extended into scythe-like claws, and its face featured twitching mandibles, eager to tear into the flesh of its victims. Is that a thrycreen? What's that thing? Nox's gaze followed Thorian's, narrowing as he spotted the danger lurking in the shadows. As Nox took a step forward to investigate, Thorian's arm shot out, halting him. Stop! That creature is dangerous. Thorian's eyes remained locked on the thrycreen emerging from the dark forest. Bathed in moonlight, the creature's immense, mantis-like body came into focus. Its green exoskeleton was adorned with brown markings, but what caught Thorian's attention was the absence of any purple streaks. Good, it's not a psion, Thorian thought with a sigh of relief. We can handle a warrior type without too much trouble. The thrycreen clattered its mandibles, emitting a menacing hiss as it readied itself for battle. Its powerful thighs tensed, reminiscent of a tightly coiled Roman slingshot. Seeing the creature poised to attack, a brown kobold bravely stepped forward, intent on blocking the oncoming assault. Thorian had no time to react before the thrycreen sprang into action. Swish! With agility rivaling even Nox's, the colossal mantis charged at the brown kobold. In response, the defender raised his guard and fortified his forearms with his rocky armor skill. The thrycreen leaped into the air, its silhouette framed by the luminous moon. Its razor-sharp claws gleamed silver as it descended upon the kobold. Bracing for impact, the defender ensured his rocky arms covered his vital organs. Alas, the creature's claws proved too sharp. Shring! With a resounding crash, the thrycreen's gleaming claws tore through the kobold's rocky armor, sinking into flesh beneath. Just as it seemed the kobold would lose his arms, a shadowy figure darted in from the side, delivering a powerful kick that sent the creature reeling. Thorian, having prepared his waterball spell, seized the opening provided by Nox. He unleashed his attack on the thrycreen before it could regain its footing. A tremendous splash followed as the gargantuan mantis was hurled backward, creating an opening for another strike. Nox pounced on the opportunity, slamming his axe into the falling behemoth and shattering one of its colossal claws. As Nox noticed Thorian advancing beside him, he activated his shadow skill and enveloped the wounded thrycreen in a cloak of darkness. Thorian closed in, his hand ablaze with fiery red energy. Combustion touch. Thorian's inferno enveloped the thrycreen, immersing it in a hellish blaze. After a final, feeble struggle, the colossal mantis succumbed to the flames. As Nox's shadows receded, the thrycreen's charred remains collapsed into a heap. All that lingered were Thorian's searing flames and the remnants of steam from the earlier waterball. Brother, are you okay? Thorian looked over to see the brown kobold attending to his injured sibling. Blood stained the wounded kobold's brown fur a deep crimson, and Thorian caught a glimpse of white bone through the torn flesh. "I'm okay," the injured kobold gasped through the pain. "That bastard cut through my armor like it was nothing. Priests, come out and help." Thorian called beyond the gate before he and Nox approached the injured kobold. Visibly concerned, Nox hurried to his wounded friend and asked, "Are you okay? Is it just a flesh wound?" "Thank you, Nox," the brown kobold managed a pained smile. "If you hadn't helped me, I'd have lost both my arms." "Still." Nox gazed down at his friend with sadness as a Kobloid priest hurried to the scene. Healing, the White Kobold invoked his spell, and golden light emanated from his hand, tenderly enveloping the brown kobold's wound. Gradually, flesh mended, concealing the exposed bone, while veins reconnected, and the skin fully healed. Much better." The brown kobold flexed his forearm, rotating it left and right to ensure its proper function. He looked at the Kobloid priest with gratitude. "Thank you, you saved me." "That skill is truly a miracle," the other brown kobold remarked with an impressed whistle. He glanced at his healed brother and teased, "You would have become a cripple without it." "I would still have had my other arm," the healed kobold retorted playfully. "I'd have no problem beating you up with just one." The concerned brother shook his head and clicked his tongue. "You're still in the mood to talk smack after almost losing your arm." As the brown kobolds bantered and laughed with Nox, the once injured kobold's expression turned thoughtful. "But how did that bastard break through my rocky armor? Are its claws just that sharp?" "That's its skill," Thorian explained. "That giant mantis is called a treacherous warrior. One of its abilities is armor breaking, which is why it could easily slash through your skill." The two brown kobolds stared at Thorian, their mouths agape, before casting their gazes downward. "That is a concerning thought. To think that there are skills that can just ignore our armor so easily." "That depends on the strength of your armor," Thorian countered. "If it were much stronger, the treacherous wouldn't have been able to break through." The brown kobold looked up at Thorian with a raised eyebrow before bursting into hearty laughter. "So you're saying we just need to become stronger, and we won't have to worry about it?" "I like that. That's the one rule of this world," Thorian shrugged before changing subjects. "Anyway, now that you're healed, we need to move." He turned to Nox and said, "We'll patrol along the village wall. You'll cover the east side, and I'll take the west." Shifting his focus to the two brown kobolds, Thorian continued outlining his plan. "You two will keep watch from the watchtower at this gate. If you spot monsters approaching, engage them if you think you can defeat them, but stay inside if you can't. It doesn't matter if the wall is breached, your lives are more important." The two kobolds took a moment to process the orders before nodding, while Nox gazed at Thorian with a hint of sadness. "So we're not going to fight together?" Caught off guard by the unexpected response, Thorian's mouth hung open for a few seconds before he chuckled. "It's just until the assassins and the Brown Army return. After that, we'll fight together." Nox reluctantly nodded and then turned his attention to the two brown kobolds. "See you in a bit, you two." "Don't die," the brown kobold replied. With a light chuckle, Nox and Thorian sprang up onto the wall. They then sprinted along the ledge, each heading in a different direction. While patrolling the village, Thorian encountered goblins, chaskas, thumpalopes, and rebarians. Fortunately, he didn't come across any group too large or powerful for him to handle. Employing his fireball and waterball spells, he bombarded his foes with ranged attacks before closing in and finishing the job with his combustion touch. It took 40 minutes for the group that had ventured to the village hall to return to the southern gate. During that time, Thorian successfully leveled up both his Magus class and his Flame Kobold species. Display panel. Ding. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 5 30ths, EXP, 13/700. Class Magus. Level 19 20ths, EXP, 383/490. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering 2nd Stage, 5.3%. Stats. Strength 43. Agility 47. Constitution 24. Mana 54. Chi 14. Free points 9. Skills. Minor Fire Affinity, passive. Flame Resistance, passive. Fireball, active. Combustion Touch, active. Water Ball, active. So I have 9 free points left? I should leave them be for now, they can prove useful in a pinch. Upon checking his system panel, Thorian quickly refocused on the scene unfolding before him. The small brown Kobloid army was making its way toward the southern gates, guided by the 3 assassins. Now that they possessed enhanced language abilities, the Kobloids were more talkative than ever, engaging in ceaseless whispering, laughter, and conversation. As Thorian observed the brown Kobloid group, he spotted an intriguing interloper, a small, green humanoid who fidgeted nervously, glancing left and right. Bricks? Thorian raised an eyebrow and smiled at the unexpected presence. However, he remained silent and simply watched from a distance. As the group of brown Kobloids neared the gates, the green creature caught sight of Thorian standing atop the wall, and its face lit up with recognition. "Master, I was looking for you," Bricks called out. Thorian furrowed his eyebrows. "I thought I had already given you your orders. Did you perhaps already cook the thumpalopes?" "About that." Bricks scratched the back of his head. "It's been raining a lot, and the rocks and branches are all wet. It's very hard to start a fire." Thorian's eyebrows furrowed even further at the goblin's excuse. "So? Are you not going to follow my orders then?" "No, of course I will," Bricks exclaimed, then continued in a quieter, more timid voice. "I was just wondering if you could help me a little. If you could use your spell to start a fire, it would help me a lot." Thorian thought for a bit before concluding, "It is not an unreasonable demand." "Sure, I can help you," he agreed, much to Brix's delight. He then glanced at the watchtower where the brown kobold stood. "Split the group as we discussed earlier and stay here. You can move to the east and west gates after I return." "Sure, you got it, Thorian," the brown kobold replied. With the matter settled, Thorian jumped down to join Bricks and said, "Lead the way." The little green creature happily scampered through the forest, with Thorian following closely behind. After passing through a dense patch of trees and reaching the center of the village, Thorian was greeted by an unusual contraption. 2 large and sturdy branches supported an orc chest plate above them, like a makeshift pot. Beneath the chest plate were several branches, arranged to resemble a fire pit. "Are you going to use the chest plate to cook the thumpalopes?" Thorian asked, turning toward Bricks. The goblin, proud of his resourcefulness, smiled and said, "Yeah, I found them in the village hall and thought they would work well as a pot." Thorian sighed heavily at the goblin's short-sightedness before pointing out the significant flaw in his plan. "What about the sweat? Are you going to cook thumpalopes with orc sweat flavor on top?" Realizing his mistake, Bricks yelped and stepped back, fearing Thorian's retaliation. However, Thorian could only shake his head at the simplicity of the goblin's thought process. No matter how shrewd, a goblin is still a goblin. Silently, Thorian removed the chest plate from the 2 branches and placed it on the ground. He then conjured his water ball spell and launched it at the inside of the makeshift pot. With a loud splash, the force of the water ball caused the chest plate to sink into the ground beneath it. But Thorian wasn't finished. He conjured a fireball and launched it inside the chest plate. Following a small explosion, the water transformed into vapor and steam, which enveloped the area. Unfazed, Thorian walked through the hot steam, retrieved the orc chest plate, and sniffed it. Still has the smell of sweat. After repeating the process several times, Thorian launched his spells one after the other until the smell was purged from the makeshift pot. The chest plate was deformed in some spots due to the temperature shock, but Thorian wasn't concerned about that. The smell was a far greater issue. With that task completed, Thorian glanced back at the goblin, whose eyes sparkled with amazement. "Can you handle the flames without burning the whole place down?" The dazed goblin took a few seconds before nodding. "Yes. Yes, I can." "I hope so." Thorian clicked his tongue and turned back to the pitiful-looking fire pit Bricks had created. He then conjured a fireball and launched it a couple of meters to the side of the fire pit. "Use that fire to light up your pit," Thorian instructed, glancing back. Eagerly, Bricks sprang into action, removing branches from his fire pit. He lit them using Thorian's fire before using the smaller branches to ignite the entire pit. Once done, he placed the chest plate on top of the larger branches and fetched the Thumpalo pieces he had cut up and placed them on a leaf bed nearby. At least he skinned them well. I guess he is not too useless after all. Seeing things progressing smoothly, Thorian used his water ball spell to extinguish the fire he had started earlier before heading back toward the southern gate. Dusk was approaching, and the day was about to begin. It was sure to be a long day without a moment to catch their breath. Thorian settled onto the wall's ledge, surveying his surroundings. Just moments ago, the area had been teeming with kobloids, but now they had dispersed to the east and west gates under the guidance of the two brown kobolds. Now that I think about it, I should give them names too. It gets tiring to call both of them brown kobold. The three silvery white assassins were also nowhere in sight. Following Thorian's orders, they patrolled the perimeter of the wall, lending support to all four sections. Recalling their unique appearance, Thorian's expression grew thoughtful. I wonder what evolution they had received. That form doesn't look like a normal white kobold. They also had those black streaks decorating their fur. As Thorian lost himself in thought, the sky above transformed into a mesmerizing tapestry of hues. Dusk descended upon the landscape, bathing everything in warm shades of orange and pink. The sun's final rays danced along the horizon, gracefully outlining the clouds before disappearing beneath the skyline. This stunning vista stood in stark contrast to the reek of death that hung heavy in the forest. The putrid scent of decaying corpses and congealed blood, mingling with the saturated soil, served as a haunting reminder of the apocalypse. It was an evolutionary hellscape, where only the most ruthless emerged triumphant, and emperors reigned over realms of devastation. "Thorian, we have some guests," Nox called out from the watchtower, pointing to their right. Following his gesture, Thorian spotted a small group of goblins charging toward the wall, ropes clutched in their hands. Without hesitation, Thorian summoned a fireball spell and unleashed it upon the hapless creatures. Nox swiftly followed Thorian's assault, closing in on the goblins with an almost supernatural speed. Caught off guard, the goblins could only flail helplessly as the Shadowstalker's axe cleaved through them with ruthless efficiency. What a strange weapon for an assassin, Thorian couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. Hopefully, we'll get some good gear once we challenge the dungeons. As Thorian contemplated the dungeons, a subtle grin crept onto his face. The Wolvendale territory, or Raven's Nest as it was known in his previous life, was highly coveted not just because of the Ether Line's Nexus attribute, but also due to the dungeons that surrounded it. These dungeons were a true treasure trove for anyone who ruled over the territory. Still, we need to solve the issues here first. The orcs should bring enough wood to upgrade all the statues in a few more hours, but it's the 100 citizen requirement that's truly putting a wrench in our wheels. We need to upgrade the village so that we can get access to better walls. Thorian clicked his tongue and lowered his gaze, lost in contemplation. Though numerous opportunities awaited beyond the village, he knew he couldn't leave, at least not yet. Once our main force evolves to kobolds, our defenses should be strong enough that my presence wouldn't be absolutely required. I can then go explore the dungeons or start on all the quests I have already gathered. Time passed as Thorian and Nox guarded the southern gate together. With their combined might, none of the forest monsters managed to breach the walls. The pair decimated Chaskas and their evolved form, tailmashers, goblins, and Rabarian hordes. 2 more Thrycreans emerged from the dense forest, but with their previous experience, Nox and Thorian had no trouble dispatching them. After 3 hours, Thorian had leveled up twice in his Magus class and 3 times in his Flame Kobold species. Just as he was about to check his system panel, he heard footsteps approaching. Glancing to the right, Thorian saw one of the assassins running towards him and Nox, a pleased expression on his face. The Magi. The Magi have evolved, the assassin announced breathlessly as he raced toward the pair. Finally, Nox raised an eyebrow. Took them long enough. Have they been slacking? Upon reaching them, the assassin couldn't help but chuckle at Nox's response. Boss, we only advanced so quickly because of your help. They couldn't hunt as effectively in the north. But enough about that, the assassin shook his head, his expression brightening as he turned to Thorian. One of them evolved into a Flame Kobold, just like you, boss. Oh wow, another Flame Kobold. Nox exclaimed while Thorian's eyebrow lifted in pleasant surprise. So it's like I thought, the skills you use are what determines your evolution path. Thorian's smile widened at the incredible news. Having another Flame Kobold on their side would help them immensely, especially in freeing up the assassins who wouldn't need to spend most of their time on the east and west sides assisting the brown Kobloids. What about the other Magi? What did they evolve into? Thorian inquired curiously. While having a Flame Kobold was great news, he was already familiar with that species' abilities and powers. He was most curious about the other evolutions. They evolved into their specific elements, the assassin replied curtly. Water, wind, and earth. Oh, how do they look? Are they cool? Nox, excited by the new evolutions, couldn't help but exclaim his emotions. The water one is blue, the wind one is yellow, and the earth one is dark brown. As for their abilities, I haven't seen them yet, boss. Nox turned toward Thorian and stared at him with expectant eyes. Thorian obviously understood that Nox wanted to go and see the newly evolved kobolds with his own eyes. We can't yet, Thorian shook his head, before focusing back on the assassin. What about the rest of the Kobloids? Did they evolve yet? Not yet, the assassin shook his head. But they're close. I think in like half an hour they should evolve too. Thorian grinned at the good news before looking back at Nox. We can meet up with them in half an hour then. Yay! Nox jumped up in joy. I wonder what kind of skills they have. I'm sure they will be really cool. Both Thorian and the assassin rolled their eyes at Nox's theatrics. Observing the assassin's reaction, Thorian chuckled softly before issuing his orders. Go see what the orcs have been up to and report on their progress. Once the other Kobloids evolve, return with 4 capable evolved kobolds to stand guard here while we investigate the northern gate. Understood? You got it, boss. The assassin offered Thorian a 2-fingered salute before executing a backflip off the wall and into the village. What a show-off, Thorian shook his head as the assassin vanished into the dense foliage. He then turned back to Nox, who was still clenching his fist in anticipation of the new evolutions. In a way, Nox's enthusiasm touched Thorian. The fact that he was so thrilled by the evolution of his brethren revealed Nox's true nature. Despite having been virtually ostracized just days earlier, he was now wholeheartedly supporting his group. I suppose he's still a child at heart. Taking a deep breath, Thorian redirected his attention from the black kobold to his own progress. Display panel. Ding. Status panel. Race Flame Kobold. Level 7/30ths, EXP, 15/840. Class Magus. Level 20/20ths, EXP, Max. Lifespan 40 years. Cultivation Realm Chi Gathering 2nd Stage, 5.3%. Stats. Strength 47. Agility 52. Constitution 27. Mana 57. Chi 14. Free points 15. Skills. Minor Fire Affinity, passive. Flame Resistance, passive. Fireball, active. Combustion Touch, active. Water Ball, active. Now that Thorian had reached the limit of his class, he needed to attain maximum proficiency in all 4 skills before he could pursue class advancement. With this realization, he turned his attention to examining the proficiency of each skill. Fireball. Description: you conjure a fiery orb and hurl it at your enemies, leaving them charred and weakened. Proficiency 100%. Water Ball. Description: you summon a watery orb and launch it at your enemies, drenching them and knocking them off balance. Proficiency 23.5%. Still quite a long way to go, and I haven't even started with the 2 last skills yet. Reflecting on the final 2 starting skills, Wind Gust and Rock Bullet, Thorian scratched his chin as he considered their cost. Each skill carried a price tag of 500 arcane coins. Although he could purchase one of them using the rewards from his quests, he would still come up short for the other. I guess I need to go to the dungeons then. As Thorian and Nox approached the northern gates, the Shadowstalker clenched his fists, barely containing his excitement. Inley looked so amazing after his evolution, he exclaimed, glancing at Thorian. Those red tattoos on his face, savage. Nox's infectious enthusiasm brought a smile to Thorian's face. Reflecting on the image of the transformed warrior, he couldn't help but draw a comparison to the Berserker class. That might be a good class advancement for them. Contemplating the potential that lay before them, Thorian's own excitement grew. Assembling a full squad of Kobold Berserkers at this early stage of the apocalypse could pave the way for future glory. Returning to the present, Thorian and Nox arrived at the northern section of the village. Like a relentless swarm of termites, the orcs methodically stripped away the forest that stood before the gates, clearing an unobstructed view toward the village hall. With tireless efficiency, they felled one tree after another, gradually diminishing the cluster of trees encircling the village center. Wow, they're fast. Nox marveled. We spent the whole afternoon cutting trees, but they've already cut so much more than us. Thorian nodded, his smile reflecting their impressive progress. With this much, we should have enough wood to upgrade the last 3 statues into guilds. The only requirement left would be to have 100 registered citizens. He scratched his chin, contemplating the brown cobloids. I want them all to evolve into proper kobolds before we approach their tribe. That would make the negotiations significantly easier. As the 2 neared the gates, they discovered the group of newly evolved kobolds gathered within the village, talking amongst themselves. The warriors retained their distinct white color, but were now embellished with tribalistic red tattoos that adorned their faces and bodies. That's the second step of the stabilization plan finalized, Thorian thought with a smile. That only leaves the naturalization of the orcs, the evolution of the brown cobloids, and reaching the 100 registered citizen goal. Looking back at the group, Thorian saw Forlorn sitting amongst the group of newly evolved warriors. However, he no longer exuded the same aura of strength and power he once had. The kobolds were now as large and powerful as him, if not more so, rendering his appearance rather ordinary in comparison. Though the moon kobold conversed with the others, his energy seemed subdued. His gaze would drift into the distance, and his posture lacked the commanding presence it once held. I told him this was going to happen, but I guess experiencing it is different. Is he okay? Nox observed the moon kobold's unusual demeanor and whispered to Thorian. The latter merely shook his head and continued walking toward the group. Forlorn, Thorian called out, capturing the kobold's attention. "Everyone, I see you have all evolved. Fighting those monsters is so much easier now," King Bellifer proudly declared, flexing his enhanced muscles. "I never thought our evolution would be this good," Cryman added, turning to Thorian and offering a respectful bow. "It's all thanks to you, my king." Thorian surveyed the group of warriors, his eyebrows knitting together in concern. Including Forlun, there were only 3 of them. Where's Kadar? No matter where he looked, Thorian couldn't locate the final warrior, the one who had placed second in the woodcutting competition and displayed the most potential among the Kobloids. At Thorian's question, the 2 warriors exchanged glances, leaving Forlun to provide an explanation. He was badly injured. The Moon Kobold rose to his feet, directing his gaze toward the rightmost watchtower. "The healer priest is taking care of him right now. Is he okay?" Nox inquired, concern evident in his voice as Thorian and Forlun strode toward the watchtower. Sensing the change in atmosphere, the Shadowstalker trailed quietly behind them. Upon reaching the base of the watchtower, Thorian discovered the Kobloid priest tending to Kadar, who was laying on the ground. The priest chanted a spell, focused on his patient. Noticing Thorian's approach, the priest offered an explanation. "The bleeding has stopped, but his arm is gone." Thorian's eyes fell upon Kadar, who emitted pained, labored breaths. His arm had been cleanly severed at the elbow, and the wound was now sealed thanks to the priest's healing skill. "I'm sorry, King," Kadar managed a pained smile as he looked at Thorian. "I have become a cripple." Thorian closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Well, I can't say that was not expected." He then glanced at Forlun, who wore an expression of both shame and sadness. "It was not unexpected, but they were still under your responsibility." "What happened?" Thorian asked Forlun, seeking answers. "How did things come to this?" "It was that giant mantis," Forlun bit his lower lip as he explained. "Half an hour ago, just after the Magi evolved, the giant mantis appeared and caught us off guard. It was so fast. By the time Ventus could react, it had already taken Kadar's arm." Thorian nodded at Forlun's explanation, deciding not to probe any further. If it was a Thrycrane, then it was understandable. Without a proper grasp of its strengths and weaknesses, it might be one of the most challenging monsters to fight in the forest at the moment, at least among the normal ones. Thorian glanced back down at Kadar, pondering the situation as he scratched his chin. Nox, on the other hand, could only fidget in silence while Thorian was lost in thought. If it's just one arm, then it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Good thing it happened recently, too. With a strategy in mind, Thorian turned to the group and declared, "From now on, do not kill any of the monsters that come knocking at our doors. Strip them of their limbs and allow Kadar to deliver the final blow." All eyes were fixed on Thorian as he outlined his plan, a mixture of confusion and curiosity filling their expressions as they tried to understand his reasoning. "King, why?" Kadar inquired weakly. "You'll find out soon enough," Thorian replied, casting a reassuring smile at the injured warrior. "Just rest for now." Forlun, initially taken aback by Thorian's plan, quickly adapted and regained his composure. He addressed the 2 bewildered warriors, saying, "You heard our king's orders. Let's move." "Understood, boss," Cryman acknowledged, nodding at Forlun as he and the other warrior trailed behind the Moon Kobold. The trio effortlessly scaled the wall in just a few steps, while Thorian observed from the side, pleased. He is shaping up in his role quite nicely. Impressed by Forlun's demeanor, Thorian turned to Nox and suggested, "Shall we head upstairs?" Nox, who had remained silent throughout, eagerly nodded in agreement. "Yeah, let's go." Thorian chuckled softly at his companion's enthusiasm before they both ascended the watchtower stairs. Reaching the top, they found Ventus and Aqua surveying the battlefield below. "You're looking sharp, Ventus," Thorian praised the light yellow kobold, a coloration he had rarely seen among their kind. He then turned his attention to the blue kobold, adding, "You too, Aqua." "Thank you for the compliment, my lord," Aqua replied with a graceful bow, his words imbued with an uncommon elegance rarely encountered among kobolds and cobloids. "You too, king." Ventus boomed with a hearty laugh. "We're looking good, but you two are looking even better." Feeling bashful of the compliment, Nox scratched his head and laughed. "Thank you." Meanwhile, Thorian simply smiled and joined the two magi as they gazed out from the watchtower. Below, the group of warriors stood by the wall, poised for any ill-fated creature that might dare approach. "I'm curious. What kind of skill did you acquire from your evolution?" Thorian asked the pair. Ventus' expression swelled with pride at Thorian's question. "I think it's better if I show you, king." The yellow kobold extended his arm, pointing his palm toward the forest. Taking a deep breath, he bellowed, "Gale slash." A crescent wave of wind surged from the watchtower, slicing cleanly through several sizable trees. "Wow! That is so powerful." Nox cheered, while Ventus basked in the praise, scratching his nose. "Did you have to shout the name, though?" Aqua sighed, casting a disappointed glance at the wind magus. "No, but it does sound cool that way," Ventus replied, bubbling with excitement. As the trio bantered, Thorian nodded in appreciation of Ventus' skill, deep in thought as he scratched his chin. "Gale slash is a very useful skill," Thorian remarked, much to the wind magus's delight. "I know, right? It cut through that big mantis immediately. But it does use up quite a bit of mana, though." Thorian nodded at Ventus' explanation, then continued sharing his thoughts. "That is a good use for the skill, indeed. But I think I have a better one." Ventus raised an eyebrow, curiosity piqued. "And what is that, king?" Thorian took his time, scratching his furry chin before replying, "Cutting trees." A few seconds of silence passed as Thorian and Ventus exchanged glances. Thorian's gaze held a mix of interest and gravity, while Ventus looked incredulous. The wind magus chuckled nervously, raising an eyebrow at Thorian. "That was quite the joke, king. You have a great sense of humor." Thorian's furrowed brow at Ventus' response made the latter gulp in anticipation. "I don't joke about such matters, Ventus," Thorian stated in a low, controlled voice, emphasizing the finality of his words. He then glanced back at the fallen trees in the distance, a smile gracing his lips. "Gale slash is truly the ideal skill for the job. It sliced through 4 large trees more cleanly than an axe ever could." "But it consumes a lot of mana," Ventus retorted. As his voice rose slightly, Thorian fixed him with a stern gaze, prompting the wind magus to flinch. Ventus continued, his tone now more subdued. "Wouldn't it be better to use it to slay monsters and defend the walls?" Thorian scratched his chin for a few moments in thought before responding, "It's true that we're still sorely lacking in power, particularly at the eastern and western gates." Ventus' face brightened at Thorian's reply, "Exactly. I need to be on the front line to provide as much support as possible. We can't afford to assign a powerful magus like myself to tree-cutting duty." Thorian absent-mindedly nodded before adding, "Nevertheless, we still need more wood to upgrade the statues into guilds." "Guilds?" Ventus asked, tilting his head in confusion. Aqua and Nox also showed interest and leaned in closer. Thorian conjured a water ball atop his palm, captivating the 3 evolved kobolds. "Did you acquire a new skill, king?" "How?" Ventus asked excitedly. "That's the primary function of guilds," Thorian explained. "They allow you to purchase new skills using your arcane coins." "Arcane coins?" Ventus furrowed his brow before shaking his head, a wide smile spreading across his face. "Wait, so we can buy skills at these guilds? And we just need more wood to create them?" "That's the gist of it," Thorian shrugged as Ventus appeared lost in thought. "Why don't you do it?" Aqua nudged the yellow kobold. "I wouldn't mind learning a new skill, I want a new skill too. Nox chimed in enthusiastically. I'll become stronger. That would be amazing. Ventus frowned and grumbled under the peer pressure from the two kobolds before throwing his hands in the air in defeat. Ag. Fine. I get it. I'll cut those trees. I'll cut all the trees. Seeing Ventus agree to his new duties, Thorian smiled and instructed, speak with Zogther first and inform him of your plans. The orcs will need to adjust their pace to accommodate you. Don't worry, King. I'll talk to them, Ventus assured as he placed one foot on the watchtower's ledge, ready to leap. I'll cut all those trees within the village before the sun sets. With that declaration, Ventus jumped from the watchtower into the village, leaving the three kobolds behind. As they continued their conversation, Thorian heard shrieks and screams from beyond the wall. Glancing downward, he saw the warriors led by Forlorn effortlessly dispatching a small group of goblins. Seeing no major threat, Thorian redirected his attention to Aqua. What about you? What skill did you acquire? Aqua grinned in response to Thorian's question. I actually acquired 2 skills. He then raised his arm and pointed at Thorian, creating a water membrane that fully enveloped the king. Thorian surveyed his body, noticing the water that encased him from head to toe. Yet, it didn't feel constricting or suffocating in any way. Water shield? Thorian asked, looking back at Aqua. That's an excellent skill. Oh, what's that? Nox inquired, puzzled as he moved closer to Thorian. Why don't you touch it and see? Thorian suggested. Accepting the invitation, Nox approached and attempted to poke through the blue membrane. To the Shadowstalker's surprise, his claws failed to pierce the water shield. It's quite sturdy, isn't it? Thorian observed, then looked back at Aqua, who wore a slightly proud expression. What's your other skill? Seeing both Thorian and Nox watching him with interest, Aqua smiled and looked beyond the watchtower. It's called Triple Jet Stream, Aqua explained as he pointed his finger past the walls and conjured his water spell. A fist-sized water ball hovered in front of his finger for a fraction of a second before splitting into 3 shards, which launched into the ground. The 3 jet streams struck the earth in different locations, leaving burrowing holes in their wake. Much more powerful than a simple water ball, right? Aqua glanced back at Thorian and smiled. Whoa! That's powerful. You could kill 3 monsters with 1 strike. Nox exclaimed, his eyes shining with admiration. Thorian nodded in acknowledgement of Aqua's skills. It is indeed superior to a water ball. Thorian praised the water magus while observing the warriors battling various monsters beyond the wall. Whenever they dispatched a foe, one of the kobolds would carry the severely injured prey back inside for Kadar to finish off. Things are going well on this front. I should go back to the altar and check how much woof we have gotten already. I need to attend to some matters, Thorian announced before turning to Nox. Stay around here and keep an eye on things, at least until Kadar evolves. Nox frowned but nodded in agreement. Okay, I'll do that. With that, Thorian descended the stairs to find Kadar still lying on the ground, with the priest attending to him. Surrounding the pair were the mutilated corpses of various monsters, goblins, chaskas, and thumpalopes. The condition of the bodies bore witness to the warriors' efforts before presenting their prey to Kadar. You, priest, I need you to go out there after Kadar evolves, Thorian instructed, pointing at the bewildered cobloid. Me? The priest asked, puzzled. Thorian nodded and explained, yes, you need to heal your brothers while they're fighting so that you gain more experience and level up. At this rate, you're going to be left behind. The priest's mouth hung open before he lowered his gaze in shame. Thorian sighed and looked up. Fortunately, Aqua was also watching him from the watchtower. Aqua, keep an eye on your brother. Help him evolve quickly. The blue kobold nodded at Thorian's command. Don't worry, King. He'll be a kobold by the time you return." Thorian chuckled at Aqua's confident statement before turning and continuing toward the altar. As he walked through the clearing among the trees, he could see several of them falling with a loud thud in the distance. Ventus is already getting to work. That is good to see. As Thorian strode toward his destination, his stomach rumbled faintly. Feeling a moment of embarrassment, an image of a certain small green figure flashed in his mind. Oh, Breck should be done cooking the meat by now. It has been hours. Thorian smiled as he thought back to the little green goblin. Thumpalope meat was renowned as a great delicacy, even among the upper class, so he had high expectations for the meal Brex was preparing. He might be a goblin, but thumpalopes are the easiest thing to cook. It would be a travesty if he messed it up. With a smile on his face, Thorian passed by the village hall and continued to the altar behind it. As he approached, his mouth hung open and his eyebrows shot up in surprise. That's a lot of trees. The altar was surrounded by cut trees stacked on top of each other, higher than Thorian was tall. How much is that? 5 times the amount I saw last time. Their pace has definitely increased. Surprised and delighted by this turn of events, Thorian rushed toward the mountain of trees and leaped over it. With one swift motion, he crossed the ocean of wood and landed in front of the altar. As he had done multiple times already, Thorian placed his palm atop the demon's face and commanded it to absorb the trees. Territory resources. Resources. Gathered experience 9,242. Wood 5,965. Seeing the screen floating in front of his eyes, Thorian's grin stretched from ear to ear. Good, this is so much more than I expected. I can upgrade all the statues into proper guilds. The only thing left to do to advance the village would be to get more citizens. With that thought in mind, Thorian laid out his command. Upgrade assassin statue. Assassin statue. Description: the assassin statue epitomizes the art of stealth, precision, and cunning. Assassins excel in striking from the shadows, dealing lethal damage to their targets before slipping away unnoticed. Upgrade. Gathered experience 750. Wood 1,000. Do you wish to upgrade the assassin statue into the assassin guild? Yes, I wish. Hearing the rumbling in the distance, Thorian continued his task. After upgrading the assassin statue to a guild, he did the same with the priest and warrior statues. Satisfied by the progress, Thorian walked toward the village hall before locating Brix's cooking spot. The strong fire engulfing the makeshift cooking pot was hard to miss in the open field. You took your time, Brix. Thorian approached the green goblin, who was startled by the kobold's voice. It has been hours since you started cooking. I am very sorry, my lord. I messed up and burned a couple. Brix scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. But that was just the first few. I got better, and I made you one that's really good. The goblin pointed to the side, where a large roasted thumpalope thigh rested on a bed of leaves. The fatty aroma it emitted managed to overpower the smell of ash and char from the previous failed attempts. That does look appetizing, Thorian smiled as he walked over to the roasted thigh. Strangely enough, his hunger only intensified as he took in the aromas with his sharp sense of smell. However, just as he was about to take a bite, he glanced back at the green goblin and handed him the prized food. Here, why don't you take a bite? The goblin hesitated for a moment before accepting Thorian's invitation. As he grasped the piece of meat from the thigh bone, he looked up at Thorian and asked, "Can I ask why, master?" "It's a tradition in our tribe," Thorian explained nonchalantly. "Whoever hunts the prey gets to eat first. Now, this wasn't a hunt, but I believe the same principle should apply." Hearing Thorian's explanation, Brix nodded and took a bite from the tender piece of meat. Just as he was about to return it to Thorian, the latter stopped him. "Take a bite from the other side too." I want you to thoroughly taste the results of your hard work." Brix nodded and said, "Thank you, Master." He then followed Thorian's instruction to a T, taking a bite from the other side of the meat. Seeing the goblin obeying his orders, Thorian nodded with a smile. Without a word, Brix handed the thigh piece to Thorian, who immediately took a large bite out of it. It's not bad. Although it lacked salt and spices, the roasted thigh had enough fattiness and juiciness to provide a satisfying flavor and aroma. The tenderness of the cooked meat made eating it all the more enjoyable. Most importantly, it was civilized. The mere thought of becoming a savage and having to eat raw meat repulsed Thorian so much that he would have rather starved himself to death. Without uttering a word, Thorian finished his meal with delighted bites. After cleaning the bone, he glanced back at Brix, who looked at him nervously. That was perfectly cooked. Good job, Thorian nodded in approval, while Brix let out a deep sigh of relief. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Master, the goblin smiled before looking back at the remaining uncooked meat. Should I roast the rest too? Thorian followed Brix's line of sight to see the rest of the skin thumpelopes lying on another bed of leaves. While he would have liked the other kobolds to experience the delicacy of a cooked meal, Thorian still had reservations about the goblin. No, don't cook them yet, Thorian shook his head. Go around the village and try to make yourself useful. Okay, Master, Brix bowed slightly. I will do as you tell me. As Thorian looked at the goblin's meek appearance, a sudden thought flashed in his mind. Should I allow him to use my name for his safety? Wait, he was marching along the brown cobloids the last time I saw him. How did he do that? Thorian frowned and asked the goblin, last time you were walking alongside the kobolds. How did you do that without getting hurt? Brix's eyes widened as he scratched the back of his head. Ah, about that? Honestly, those kobold assassins almost killed me, they were so fast. But when I mentioned your name, they thankfully stopped and listened. You're a sharp little thing, aren't you? Thorian's slight smile betrayed his hidden emotions. He then scratched his chin with a pensive gaze, recalling Brix's earlier proposition. As for your tribe, we'll discuss that matter later. I hope they're as smart as you are. Brix's expression brightened at Thorian's suggestion. The tribe chief is a shaman, Master. He's really wise and smart, I'm sure he'll listen to you properly. A goblin shaman. Thorian looked down and thought before shrugging. Well, that's a matter for later. Don't just slack off, make yourself useful, you understand me? Yes, Master, Brix enthusiastically nodded his head. I will do my best. With that, Thorian turned around and walked toward his new destination, the Eastern Gate. With quick strides, he crossed the patch of trees and reached the wooden wall, where he found 3 of the cobloids sitting next to the gate, battered and wounded. Beyond the wall, the war cries and the sounds of battle raged on. Thorian jumped atop the wall and saw the group of cobloids fighting against 3 chaskas. While the brown kobold had little problem blocking the overgrown cat's attacks with his armor skill, the other cobloids were not as fortunate. The agile chaskas darted from one side of the battlefield to the other, smashing the hapless brown creatures with the large boulders attached to the ends of their tails. Cobloids were sent flying through the air from the strikes, their ribs and bones likely broken. However, the chaskas could not do as they pleased either. Whenever they struck one cobloid, another 2 or 3 would take their place and surround the chaska. With their sharp claws and fangs, they would tear apart the large cat's flesh. It was a good thing they didn't face a tail masher, they would have encountered real trouble otherwise. As Thorian scanned the battlefield, he saw that 2 of the cobloids were heavily injured from their encounter with the chaskas. Adding them to the 3 that were sitting inside the village brought the tally of injured to 5. That leaves 10 able to fight in this group, 11 if you count the kobold too. Thorian clicked his tongue before formulating a plan in his mind. They have shown enough bravery and they have been naturalized enough. I think it's time to enter the second phase of their integration. As the battle came to a close, Thorian jumped down from the wall, attracting the attention of the Kobloids. Soon, the brown kobold noticed the commotion and turned around as well. "Oh, Thorian, you have come." Thorian walked toward the brown kobold while the Kobloids around them murmured "Flame Kobold" and "King." None of the Kobloids, however, dared to speak up or ask for Thorian's attention. "I see that a lot of your guys got beat up," Thorian looked around and commented. The brown kobold bit his lower lip and looked down. "It's my fault. I thought there were only 2 Chaskas, but a third one appeared after we started the fight. Let's go inside." Thorian motioned with his head toward the gate. "It's not safe here." The brown kobold nodded before issuing his order to the rest of his group. "Let's go inside. Handle the 2 injured with care." The group of Kobloids immediately sprang into action. 4 of them tended to the injured while the rest entered the village. As they passed through the gate, Thorian looked at the brown kobold and said, "Your numbers are running low. Fights will become much harder like this." The brown kobold bit his thumb and replied, "I'm sorry, it's my fault. I was too incompetent." "No," Thorian shook his head. "You were just too weak." The brown kobold looked down without saying a word, leaving an awkward silence between the two. However, Thorian did not immediately break it. He needed that silence for the kobold to understand the situation. After 20 seconds or so, Thorian looked up at the wall and asked, "When do the assassins usually come here?" Surprised by the change of subject, the brown kobold took a few seconds to answer. "Every half an hour or so. They should be here any minute now." "Good, that's good," Thorian nodded before looking back at the kobold. "Like I said, you are weak, but you don't need to be." The kobold raised an eyebrow at Thorian's statement before nodding in understanding. "You're right. I need to hunt more so that I level up and become strong." "That's one way, but that's not what I was talking about." Thorian looked intently at the kobold, who was engrossed in his words. "Have you ever wondered why all the kobolds you've seen in this place are so much stronger than usual? Is it because of you?" The brown kobold tilted his head in confusion. "Nox said that they became stronger thanks to you." "In one sense of the word, that is true," Thorian chuckled. "But the true reason is that I gifted them a class." "A class?" The brown kobold inquired, his face a mix of curiosity and confusion. "What is that?" "For now, just think of it as a way to level up twice, and get double your normal stats. It also gives you a variety of skills, which would make you that much stronger." "That's amazing." The brown kobold couldn't help but exclaim. However, his loud voice drew the attention of the other Kobloids, which displeased Thorian. Seeing Thorian's facial expression, the brown kobold made an apologetic face before speaking in a lower voice, "I'm sorry." "Just be calm," Thorian responded before his gaze shifted to the wall. Spotting 3 figures rushing atop it, he slightly smiled. "And I think they have finally come." Upon spying the 3 assassins scaling the wall, a smile played upon Thorian's lips. His original intent had been to assist the brown kobold in unlocking his class, but he recognized the imprudence in leaving the Kobloids to their own devices. "Oh, is that the boss?" One of the assassins, realizing Thorian's presence, leapt toward him. "Had we known you were here, we wouldn't have bothered. You alone are more than capable of safeguarding everyone." "Your presence is appreciated, nonetheless," Thorian responded, shaking his head. His gaze then shifted to the brown kobold. "We have a matter to attend to in the village center." The assassin's brows knit together in momentary confusion, soon replaced by understanding. "Ah, are you about to acquire a class?" He shot a smile at the brown kobold, nodding in acknowledgement. "Excellent, you'll be significantly stronger." The brown kobold laughed nervously, managing a thank you in response. Thorian's attention returned to the assassin, the topic of conversation shifting. "You've been on patrol for some time. What's the state of the western gate? It's much the same as here, the assassin sighed. We have 4 injured, but they should manage well enough against the standard goblins and a couple of chaskas. Hearing the assassin's words, Thorian scratched his chin. Could we use the same idea as with Kadar? No, broken bones will need 2 or 3 level ups to heal. We must get more priests with the heal skill. Thorian cast his gaze over the brown cobloids who had congregated into distinct clusters and cliques. Each group occupied its own corner, immersed in conversation and punctuated by bouts of laughter. I can't have them all leave their spot at the same time, it will leave us undefended for too long. Thorian clucked his tongue, returning his attention to the assassin. I'll entrust this position to you for a while. We shouldn't be gone long. Take all the time you need, boss, the assassin replied, laughing robustly. No one's getting past these walls on our watch. That's reassuring to hear, Thorian said, chuckling lightly. He then glanced back at the brown kobold and gestured with his head toward the village center. Shall we proceed? As they ambled towards the village hall, Thorian began to elaborate. There are 4 classes to choose from: warrior, assassin, magus, and priest. Each one has its own unique strengths and weaknesses. The brown kobold absorbed this information with a thoughtful expression, then turned to Thorian and asked, which class did Nox choose? Assassin, Thorian responded. They specialize in agility and lethal strikes. While they may not excel at handling multiple enemies simultaneously, they can deliver decisive blows to a single target. At Thorian's explanation, the brown kobold's demeanor transformed, his features alight with excitement. Can I also become an assassin? Thorian took a moment before responding. Ultimately, the choice is yours. However, one advantage of being in a guild is that we can assess your aptitude. After the test, you'll know which class best suits your abilities. Scratching his chin, the brown kobold nodded in understanding. That's logical. I should choose the class where my talent lies. That way, I can become stronger in the future. Well, you don't strike me as the assassin type, but I have been surprised before. I guess we will see when we will get there. As they journeyed toward the assassin guild, the brown kobold shot a curious glance at Thorian, asking, Can you change your class after you've chosen it? You can, Thorian confirmed, a chuckle escaping his lips. But it's usually not desirable. Changing classes means losing all your levels and forfeiting the progress made in your class skills. Unless you're aiming for a specific type of class, it's not a decision taken lightly. A specific type of class? The brown kobold cocked his head in confusion. I thought there were only 4 classes. You needn't concern yourself with that for now, Thorian replied, his smile gentle. Special classes aren't something you can attain simply because you wish to. They require exceptional luck. Upon reaching the Assassin Guild, Thorian immediately noted the austere silence that pervaded the space. The guild was unpretentious and functional, its emphasis on practicality over flamboyance typical of a low-level guild. The walls, constructed of dark, polished wood, swallowed the light, lending the space an air of clandestine seclusion. To the left of the entrance, the training room stood out, purpose-built for assessing the skills of potential recruits. The area was bare and spacious, furnished with an array of training dummies, weapon racks, and an intricate sequence of obstacle courses meant to test agility, stealth, and precision. As in the Magus Guild, the guild master's desk was situated to the right. The sleek, undecorated surface held only a few meticulously organized parchments and a single, gleaming dagger serving as a paperweight. Instead of a regular figure, however, Thorian could only discern a void-like silhouette seated on a chair before the desk. "What's that?" The brown kobold murmured from beside him, his gaze also locked onto the shadowy entity. "Oh, a shadowkin?" The guildmaster bore a slender, agile figure. His skin was a deep obsidian black, mirroring the color of the midnight sky, yet it radiated an ethereal shimmer when struck by the right angle of light. His eyes were an extraordinary feature. They gleamed brightly, almost luminescent with a silver hue that stood in stark contrast against his dark skin. They were reflective and profound, as though harboring an ocean of untold tales. His hair, as black as his skin and cascading down to his shoulders, was styled back to keep clear of his face. Most strikingly, the Shadow King Guild Master was enshrouded in a robe of shadows. These shadows undulated and flowed around him as if they possessed a life of their own. Kobolds, intriguing, the Guild Master lifted his gaze from the parchments on his desk, focusing his attention on Thorian. "Are you the lord of this domain?" "I am." Thorian stepped forward to address the Shadowkin. "I'm Thorian. It's a pleasure to meet you, Guild Master." "Impressive," the Shadowkin replied, a slight smile revealing a captivating blue light hidden behind his lips. "A monster ruling over a territory is indeed a rare sight. We are here to ascertain the potential of this individual." Thorian indicated the brown kobold with a tilt of his head. "Could you please administer the test?" "A brown kobold, I see." The Shadowkin's gaze shifted to Thorian's companion. "The standard test won't suffice. It's designed for humans who have yet to receive their classes and unlock the system. A monster who has already undergone its first evolution would pass it with ease." "Does that mean I can become an assassin?" the brown kobold asked eagerly, buoyed by the Guild Master's words. "The physical examination is just one aspect," the Shadowkin shrugged. "Your personality and mental prowess are equally crucial." The brown kobold's brow furrowed as he asked, "So, do I possess the right personality for it?" "That's what we need to determine," the Shadowkin replied with a smile, striding past the duo. "Let's head outside. We don't want to risk breaking anything if we spar indoors." While the brown kobold appeared confused, Thorian couldn't suppress a grin. "It's been a while since I saw a Shadowkin fighting. Their skills and spells are the most frustrating thing to deal with." As the Shadowkin strode outside, the brown kobold turned to Thorian, his brows furrowed in a silent inquiry. Observing the kobold's questioning expression, Thorian simply shrugged. "Go ahead. It should be a beneficial experience." Thus, the trio exited the guild, the brown kobold and the guild master adopting fighting stances. The kobold positioned himself widely, primed to spring at the Shadowkin and rend him with claws and fangs. In contrast, the guild master stood in a relaxed pose, hands clasped behind his back. They were roughly the same height, but the Shadowkin's demeanor and gravitas gave the impression that he towered over the brown kobold. "Come, give it your best shot," the Shadowkin beckoned, his gesture seemingly taunting the kobold. Provoked by the Shadowkin's words, the brown kobold gritted his teeth before charging at the guild master. With a fierce war cry, he lifted his arm high and aimed a clawed slash at the Shadowkin's form. The guild master sidestepped the kobold's predictable attack with ease. Yet the latter wasn't finished. The moment the Shadowkin evaded his slash, he followed up with an uppercut, which the Shadowkin also deftly avoided. The kobold launched a barrage of attacks, all of which the guild master nimbly dodged. Each strike appeared as though it might hit, but the Shadowkin always managed to elude them by the merest fraction. "Let's stop here." After deftly sidestepping one final attack, the guild master seized the brown kobold by the shoulder. His grip was so firm that the unfortunate kobold was unable to move a single muscle. Once the brown kobold relaxed and crumpled to the ground, the Shadowkin loosened his hold and stepped back. Thorian, witnessing his subordinate's defeat, was not surprised in the least. If the result had been any different, it would have been a miracle. "You're not suited to be an assassin," the guild master delivered his verdict. "Your attacks are too direct, and you lack the necessary cunning for a proficient assassin. Let's fight again." The brown kobold growled, leveling a glare at the Shadowkin. "I was so close to hitting you. Just give me one more chance." You weren't close to hitting him, Thorian sighed. And even if you had, it wouldn't have made a difference. Without diverting his gaze from the brown kobold, Thorian suddenly sprung forward with astonishing speed, aiming a spinning high kick at the guildmaster's neck. However, his foot simply passed through the Shadowkin's body as if it were a mirage. Maintaining his silent communion with the Shadowkin, Thorian turned back to the brown kobold to conclude his point, because hitting him achieves nothing. The brown kobold could only watch in sheer horror as Thorian's foot swung through the guildmaster's form as if he were crafted from nothing more substantial than mist. The Shadowkin, however, seemed unperturbed, a hint of a grin playing on his lips as he returned Thorian's gaze. Lord Thorian, your capacity for surprise is unending, the Shadowkin remarked, his voice laced with amusement. Your wisdom and knowledge exceed your years, quite remarkable. I just happen to be special, Thorian replied curtly, refusing to divulge any more than that. The Shadowkin glanced down, a low chuckle resonating in his chest before his gaze returned to the petrified kobold. Don't let this dishearten you. It merely suggests you're more suited to a different class. Warrior, I believe, should fit you perfectly. The brown kobold cast his gaze downwards, shame flushing his cheeks as he gritted his teeth. With a heavy sigh, he lifted his eyes back to the Shadowkin, asking, what does a warrior do? Your role is defined by your specialization, the guildmaster replied in a low, measured tone. You can serve as the shield of your team, drawing the enemy's attention and soaking up the damage. Or, you could become a relentless berserker, fueled by an insatiable bloodlust and a passion for close combat. The kobold's gaze dropped again, his brow furrowed in thought. As he mused over the options, Thorian turned his attention back to the Shadowkin. Thank you for your time, Guildmaster, he said, stepping towards the kobold to conclude the conversation. But just as he took that step, he paused, glancing back over his shoulder. I realize I neglected to ask your name. The Shadowkin's silver eyes gleamed brightly as if peering into a distant horizon. I lack a formal name, but some refer to me as Whisperwind. An honor to make your acquaintance, Whisperwind, Thorian responded, his head dipping in a respectful nod. May our relationship be enduring and prosperous. The honor is mine, Whisperwind returned, his lips curling into a small, knowing smile. Overseeing a lord as special as you promises to be most fascinating. With no further words, Thorian moved towards the brown kobold, who was now gradually pulling himself upright. Seeing the kobold's downcast, crestfallen expression, Thorian softened his gaze. Don't fret, he reassured, the guildmasters are currently insurmountable beings to us. There is no dishonor in your defeat. The brown kobold glanced up at Thorian, nodding albeit reluctantly. As they resumed their journey, the kobold trailing behind Thorian, he couldn't help but voice a question that had been gnawing at him. If they're so powerful, why can't they help us fight the monsters outside? We'd level up incredibly fast with their help. Thorian chuckled at the kobold's proposition. It would indeed be advantageous if that were possible. But the guildmasters are significantly limited outside of their guild. They lose all their powers and become extraordinarily weak if they venture beyond a certain radius. The kobold stared at Thorian in disbelief, his jaw slack. Clicking his tongue in disappointment, he sighed, that's a shame. It would have been so amazing for us if we could receive their help. Don't let greed cloud your judgment, Thorian replied, a smile playing on his lips. At this moment, you're about to transform into a being unlike any other in the world, found only here. Take pride in that. As the brown kobold absorbed Thorian's unwavering confidence, his eyes widened in surprise, and he followed him with newfound respect. The pair continued their journey until they reached another guild. Upon entering the newly minted warrior guild, Thorian was immediately enveloped by an aura of grit and resolve. The guild was unassuming yet formidable, reflecting its recent evolution from mere statue to a thriving hub of martial prowess. The walls, carved from sturdy wood, bore the scars of axes and swords, silent testimonies to the vigorous training conducted within. To the left, a capacious training room was designed to push the physical limits and martial aptitude of budding warriors. The room was outfitted with weighty training dummies, an assortment of melee weapons, and a sand pit reserved for wrestling and close combat drills. At the guild's rear, Thorian noticed a modest study where the guild master would craft battle strategies and inscribe skill scrolls for sale. Shelves brimming with military treatises and maps encircled a humble wooden table. Scattered across its surface were pieces of parchment, each inked with meticulous diagrams and battle tactics. The guild master's desk, a thick slab of oak, was situated to the right of the entrance as usual. However, Thorian's gaze was immediately drawn to the hulking figure perched on a large chair, busily inscribing words onto parchment. The desk, which would have seemed sizable under normal circumstances, appeared diminutive compared to the guild master. A mountain Goliath? The variety of races of these guild masters is truly interesting. Most of my previous ones were simple humans. His skin had a rough, stone-like texture and a grayish hue, adorned with unique patterns that mountain Goliaths regarded as marks of honor and age. His face was weather-beaten, crisscrossed with deep lines carved by both time and laughter, testament to a life abundantly lived. He was bald, with a thick beard woven with beads and small trinkets accrued from numerous battles. The mountain Goliath glanced up from his desk and noticed the new arrivals. A broad smile lit up his face, and he rose so abruptly that his chair toppled over. Standing at well over 8 feet tall, his head nearly grazed the ceiling. Had he stretched, his hands would have punctured the guild's roof. "Are you the lord of this territory?" The Goliath regarded Thorian before his features creased into a frown. "It's a pity that you're already a magus. You would have made a formidable warrior, leading your troops into the thick of battle." "Alas, I'm more inclined towards strategy," Thorian replied with a smile. He then gestured towards the brown kobold at his side. "But my companion here harbors an interest in the warrior's path. Perhaps you could evaluate him." "A brown kobold, eh?" The Goliath stroked his beard contemplatively, his face soon breaking into a wide grin. "I like it. Brown kobolds are hardy folk with big hearts. I once counted one among my friends." Caught in a moment of nostalgia, the Goliath's gaze drifted upwards before snapping back to the present. He refocused on the brown kobold. "Regardless, I'll need to assess you to determine if you have what it takes to become a mighty warrior." His eyes slid to the training grounds on the left, a thoughtful click resonating from his tongue. "A standard test won't be enough. How about a friendly spar?" Upon hearing the guild master's proposition, the brown kobold visibly shrank back. Words failed him as his gaze darted nervously between the towering mountain Goliath and Thorian. Recognizing his subordinate's plea for intervention, Thorian stepped in. "I fear a spar might be rather unfair given the significant size disparity. Wouldn't you agree, Guildmaster?" The Goliath responded to Thorian's comment with a broad grin. "My name is Rumblestone, Lord." "Thorian," he supplied. "Yes, Thorian. That's a fine name," Rumblestone nodded approvingly. "And if size is the concern, we can easily remedy that." Assuming a firm stance, Rumblestone tensed his muscles. A low growl resonated from his chest as a black aura enveloped him, and he began to shrink rapidly. In mere seconds, the aura subsided, revealing a significantly leaner form. Rumblestone now matched the brown kobold's height. Despite his trimmer silhouette, his muscles were still markedly larger than the kobold's, his biceps seeming to strain against the confines of his clothing. Although he bore the signs of age, his strength remained undeniably formidable. Rumblestone cast a glance at the training room before returning his gaze to the brown kobold. "Let's go outside. That training room isn't designed to accommodate our level of strength. It'd crumble within a few minutes of our sparring." The brown kobold, still taken aback by the guild master's transformation, found Rummelstone's new form somewhat reassuring. At least now he didn't have to crane his neck to make eye contact. Together, they exited the guild, Thorian trailing closely behind. Much like with Whisperwind earlier, the two assumed their positions, ready for a friendly bout. "Come. Show me what you've got." Spurred by Rummelstone's challenge, the brown kobold lunged at the grinning elder, aiming a right hook at him. The Goliath effortlessly deflected the strike, but the kobold was quick to follow up with an uppercut. Grinning, the guildmaster nimbly sidestepped before launching a counterattack. His fist, as solid and formidable as a slab of meat, sped towards his opponent in a swift, downward punch. Seeing the blow hurtling towards him, the brown kobold raised his hand to shield himself, encasing it in a protective armor of rock. The force of the guildmaster's punch forced him to stagger back a step, but his armored guard successfully absorbed the impact. Quick reflexes, the old Goliath roared with laughter. Your snout would have been flattened if you hadn't blocked that. However, the brown kobold was in no position to share the humor. His gaze remained riveted on the elder, before he launched himself at him once more. As the kobold unleashed a torrent of punches, the guildmaster either blocked or evaded each attack. But, just as he was about to parry another of the kobold's strikes, the latter encased his fist in the same rocky armor. Bypassing the elder's defense, the kobold's punch connected squarely with his face, causing him to bleed from his lips. Without granting him a moment's respite, the kobold unleashed a barrage of attacks, kicks, punches, swipes, and even bites. It was a brutal brawl, where instincts reigned supreme. "You're a clever little rascal, aren't you?" Even amidst the flurry of the kobold's onslaught, the elder couldn't contain his laughter. As the kobold readied a powerful haymaker punch, Rummelstone swiftly closed in and tackled him to the ground. With the kobold held firmly in his grip, Rummelstone tightened his hold, his grip audibly cracking the kobold's back as the latter futilely clawed and punched at his captor. Watching the skirmish devolve into chaos, Thorian decided to intervene. "Why don't we call it a draw? I believe this suffices as a test." "Oh, it seems I got a bit carried away." Rummelstone rose to his feet, laughing heartily while the brown kobold gasped for breath. The guildmaster's bear-like embrace had left him winded and on the verge of having his bones crushed. "You've passed," Rummelstone beamed at the brown kobold. "You possess a fearless spirit and fierce instincts. With the right training and guidance, you'll grow into a formidable warrior." Caught off guard by Rummelstone's declaration, the brown kobold looked from him to Thorian, a proud smile stretching across his face. Despite his labored breathing, he couldn't suppress his ear-to-ear grin.